Welcome, everybody, to some discussions on Game of Thrones. I'm James Johnson, and you're at my channel right now. If you have not seen these before, we are coming from the perspective of people who have seen all of the episodes up to this date and read all of the books up to this date, which are the first 5 books of the Song of Ice and Fire series. So if you don't want spoilers or predictions of any sort, this might not be the video for you. But Charlie and Westeros over there and Maester Payne over there both might have videos that are more honed to your skills. I'm not sure about Maester Payne's as of now, but they're going to introduce themselves in just a second. But this particular episode is going to the laws of gods and men. That's the one we'll be discussing today. All right.
Wait a minute, I'm LaDonna.
That's my mama, LaDonna.
And I am CharlieInWesteros, and like I always say every episode review, if you have not read the books and you don't want anything spoiled, you can check out my own reviews at youtube.com/CharlieInWesteros. And one more thing, this week the Game of Thrones exhibit is in Toronto. I will be checking it out tomorrow morning and I believe Friday, so if you're in the area, by all means check it out, line up.
Nice.
Tickets are sold out, but you can get rush tickets, so strongly encourage it.
That's awesome, Charlie. Oh, I am Maester Payne. I only have 2 videos out at the moment, but I'm on some days off here for probably till next Monday, so I hope to get 5 or 6 more out to you soon.
Very nice.
I'm working on it, people. Thank you.
Beautiful. And you can find links for both Maester Payne and Charlie and Westeros' pages in the description right now. Eli Knight couldn't join us tonight, but his page is also in the description. All right. So.
Alrighty. So I guess I will recap the events of this episode, and then we'll go into a discussion. Like I always do, I go location by location, and then we, just embrace or engage in those thoughts that we have on each setting. Like James said, the name of the episode is "The Laws of Gods and Men." I have a few thoughts on the title of the episode, but I'll bring them up as the episode goes along. I don't know if you guys wanted to bring up anything relating to the title itself before we get into discussing the episode as a whole.
I wanted to say one thing before we go in. I want to thank everybody who's watching, and I know some of you have been waiting for this to come on, and you guys have made great comments. And thank you, and we're enjoying going down the rabbit hole with you.
And to add one thing to what my mom said, I haven't been commenting in the last week. It's been a busy week. So congratulations to Vicky for graduating law school. But that's why I haven't commented.
Wait,
yeah, likewise. Master's degree, not law school, though. Alrighty, shall we get into this episode then, folks?
Better.
Alrighty, so the events that first occur in this episode are those across the Narrow Sea with Davos and Stannis. We finally, after such a long time in waiting, we get to see Braavos for the first time ever in this series. So Stannis and Davos arrive in Braavos, where they are received by, I think that character was Tycho Nestorius, the Iron Bank. He was the head of the Iron Bank, basically. I gotta say, James, LaDonna, you were right. It wasn't Arya who we would see this episode reaching Braavos, but it was these 2 characters. Anyway, going back into the episode, Tycho declines Stannis' request for financial aid, basically stating the fact that Stannis has really no large army, nor the foods or provisions necessary to sustain this kind of force. But before leaving, Davos makes a very impassioned speech about Stannis' merits, pointing out his, being a man of action, his youthful age, I guess, or his prime age, I think that was the word he used, and his capability on the battlefield, while especially pointing out that Tywin Lannister is old and his successor is pretty weak and young. He also successfully wins over the men of the Iron Bank of Braavos by showing them his fingers, which shows or proves to these people that Stannis keeps his word. He maintains an oath, so they can expect Stannis to pay the Iron Bank back. Later on, Davos goes and informs Salador Saan, the pirate whom he previously hired to fight at the Battle of the Blackwater, I do believe, that they can now afford his services once more, so they hire him back, and they are going to sail back to Dragonstone the very next day. I don't know if you guys wanted to bring up your thoughts first, or you want to hear from my perspectives.
I think you've earned the right to go first, Charlie.
Yep.
Already. Well, where to start? I guess one thought that came out really, really early on in this scene was a hint, and I make this comment in my own video review. It's a hint of how maybe the common folk feel, or how they understand things in the world. And I say this because Davos makes a statement that Cersei Lannister is the queen whose people despise her. Now, normally, of course, we the audience, we usually, we don't typically, I don't think, like Cersei, but the fact that this is stated as a common fact in this context might lead one to believe that perhaps this is a sentiment that is shared by many people in Westeros and clearly is known abroad, which is interesting because we don't usually get to see this perspective very often in the series. Another thing I thought was interesting was the fact that the fact that the Iron Bank, or Tycho Nestorius, points out how the books in Westeros are filled with words like usurper, madman, bloodright, but he states that over here in Braavos, our books hold numbers that are less open to interpretation, which I felt was quite interesting, and it, in a way, points out to some things that have been stated in previous reviews we've done about how maybe the East, or Essos, is more developed or more refined in certain ways, at least politically maybe. I have a huge thought on a parallel that is being drawn between Braavos and things in our own world, and I have to credit IC Spots, who left us, a number of us, with this thought, but I'll bring that up after I hear from you guys because it's a little longer. So the floor is for you. So who wants to go after me or follow my thoughts?
Go ahead, Jamie.
All right. Well, you made a great point about the sorry, something in my eye. You made a great point about the perspective of the masses being portrayed, because that's something Martin is trying to do intentionally in the books. It's really hard to do it. It's got to be hard to do in the TV show, because really you just got the main characters talking about what the public thinks. But later we'll even get the judge and jury scene. They're not a jury, but we get the public is allowed in on that, which is its own kind of decision. I'm talking about Tyrion's trial, but the fact that the public's allowed in on that creates the ability for them to create their own propaganda, which apparently Tywin was trying to do. But as far as Cersei's concerned and Jaime's concerned, pretty much the entire Lannister crew, their reputations are tainted. Maybe not Tywin's. Well, Tywin's too. They're pretty much all tainted, even if Tyrion's isn't really justified. But as far as, and it's ironic to me that the bankers are the ultimate people removed from society, because it seems like there's the public, and then there's the people above them that control them, and then there's the one person that even the king has to sit lower than, the supposed king. Stannis, which I think Martin's obviously playing on his own perspectives of banks. But you said the term bloodright. They list three things. We don't have, our books are not filled with usurper. What were the lines?
Usurper, madman, and bloodright. Our books hold numbers.
Usurper, madman, and bloodright. In my opinion, all three of those things are actually referring to the Night's King, in the sense that they are foreshadowing what the story we're ultimately going to learn. And that I wouldn't have felt that way except for the line that Stannis delivers in the scene when Davos, he's the only true king, and Tydos says, and you think that gives you some kind of right to our money? Or you think you have a right to our money? And Stannis says, more than any man living. Well, if the Night's King is a Lich King of some sort or another, he's not really living. His mind might be, his soul, his consciousness, but his body's not. And this may all, and I know this is out there, I don't have any proof for it, but the Night's King is obviously a main part of this now, and I feel more able to be open about this. To me, they are directly referring to the Night's King the writers are intending on that being foreshadowing. So much so that I would not doubt that the Night's King and the Iron Bank have some kind of history.
Mm.
And I loved the scene. It was wonderful. Davos's speech was wonderful. I heard some people online have some difficulties with Davos's speech convincing the Iron Bank because it seemed to come out of nowhere. But I really loved it because it was a justified speech, and I'm sure Tony Teflon loved that speech because it was basically all the reasons why Stannis should be the ruler. All the logical reasons that he should be ruler, and we got to see his hand for the first time. Loved that, and I really dug that scene, the whole thing.
All right, my turn.
Go for it, LaDonna.
First of all, I'm going to speak to what Charlie, you said, which is that Essos appears to have an idea of what the reputation is of folks that are, especially Cersei, but folks in general in Westeros. I tend to think of Braavos as really kind of not being an absolute part of Essos. It is and it isn't. You know, the way it's situated in the lagoon and kind of hidden by fog and things like that. Hey, MP. But I also I love the beauty of the cinematography of the scene. I loved the fact that one of the first lines out of Stannis' mouth, it was, well, I've been waiting all afternoon. Where are these folks? It's kind of like waiting for the Supreme Court to come in so you can argue your case. It's like they're going to come when they want to come.
And they're ready.
Yeah, and they're ready. And James made a good point. I think they were out in a clubhouse somewhere drinking like whiskey and smoking cigars. James said, oh, hell no, Mom. They've been meeting people every 15 minutes to talk about this same thing. They've heard these pity tales all day long, and they have no emotion attached. They're a bank, and that's it. The other thing, Charlie, I'd like to talk about is the name. Tycho Nestoris, it draws to mind tycoon to me. So much money. They don't care about emotions. If you can't bring me money, don't even bother. I also like the entitlement of Stannis when he's like, well, they should be coming to me. Where the hell are they? And Davos is like, you need to sit down. And then when he sits down, his chair's about a third lower than the folks who take the bank stands. I also really enjoyed, James, like you said, we've seen his hand one other time, James, but it wasn't quite clear when he put it up when the sun was there, when they captured him off the island. But it wasn't very clear. This time you got to see his nubs. It was really cool. And I thought that Mark Gatiss was great. I thought the interaction between all three was just magnificent. And I love Davos, man. He's up to the plate. He's almost, if I can mirror him, he's almost the mirror of Sam when they go to make Jon Snow the Lord Commander. You never expect these kind of folks that don't have experience in this realm to come forward and really speak their piece for their king.
Agreed. Maester Payne, did you have any thoughts before I respond to some of the things that were brought up?
Well, I think we'll just start with the overall theme of the episode to me, the laws of gods and men. I think it's judgment. Stannis is presenting his case to them. He's getting judged. The Iron Bank itself with the less open to interpretation line, which I love because that's sort of nod to the book readers also. Words are open to interpretation, numbers aren't. But that's all they care about. That's who they judge everybody by. It's just numbers and cents, right?
Which gives everybody an equal footing if they convince them, because they don't really care who you are. You convince them you've got a good cause, anybody might be king.
This is true. Good point. That's essentially it.
Okay. Well, I want to bring up something I see Spots messaged, I think all of us actually, regarding this specific scene. And I did a bit more reading into it after he mentioned this actually. He brought up the fact that in a way Braavos kind of mirrors Switzerland, if he can make this real world comparison, It's a sort of small city or small country, I guess in the case of Switzerland, but it's a smaller state which is very well known for its banking. It's very, very well defended. I mean, it's very hard to invade Switzerland, as it is known, and as occurred in the Second World War. It was the one country that wasn't conquered in continental Europe, minus, I guess, Spain and that. However, and I kind of saw this after he made a few more points in his private message to us regarding the significance of banking in terms of warfare. I remember taking an intro to world history class in my first year of undergrad, and in it we learned about this family called the Fuggers, who were, and a number of other families as well, who were basically banking families, and in effect they were just really wealthy families in, I think, predominantly Germany, but they basically funded wars between some of the biggest princely households in Europe, effectively, allowing these powerful kings, princes, rulers to maintain wars and to go to engage in warfare with each other. Another thought I want to add on to that, and I don't want this to come off as sounding, I guess, anti-Semitic, because it's not intended that way, but there was this stereotype, of course, or this association between Jews and bankers, and a lot of times during this period, I guess Jews got the blame for more or less fueling warfare between these states because they were the ones behind the money. And I don't want to say that Bravos or the Bravosi are Jews in any way like that, but I do think there is an interesting little parallel you can draw to some respect, because there was this image that the Bravosi are people who escaped slavery in old Valyria and went forth to make their own land. And it did kind of remind me of those stories of, I guess, the Old Testament, with the Jews escaping Babylonian captivity and escaping Egypt, and here they've made their own kingdom or peaceful state. I'm not advocating for any kind of state of Israel, or I'm not advocating. I'm just creating a little parallel there that I thought was kind of interesting in this context. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that.
I think that's fascinating, Charlie, and I have not thought about that. And can you spell Fugger?
F-U-G-G-E-R. There are a number of other families as well, like the Welsers, I think. There are a few. I don't think they were Jewish per se, and that's why I'm throwing that out there. That this is, when I say the Jewish Association, I'm more or less thinking of our own stereotypes or a more historical prejudice that exists towards Jews. But I mean, I think it was in a way, Bravos is in a sort of sense reimagining that stereotype in a more positive light, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
in this universe.
And that leads me back to the Shakespearean thing of Shylock, who was a usurer, not a usurper, who loaned money at exorbitant rates in The Merchant of Venice.
Precisely.
And Bravos looks like Venice. I mean, all the canals and the boats and things. But I also had told James a little earlier, it also reminded me of New York City, because it's kind of way up on a kind of or whatever. And not only do they have a huge banking community, but they also have kind of a Statue of Liberty, and they also have a mafia that they can send out to enforce it if they need it, that being the Faceless Men.
Very good point. Very good point. We never really find out how Bravos enforces their insurance that people pay their debts off. But I mean, this is obviously one of the recurring thoughts that we've all made, and of course, both you and James have made as well. I'd be curious though to see if they actually do have an army of sorts. Clearly, it's a very well defended location, but we never really get to say they have a standing army or anything.
Well, we know they have the Sea Lord.
That's true.
And that Syrio Farrell was the best swordsman of the best Sea Lord, so maybe theirs is in ships. But I think it might be a combination of both in the Faceless Men. Hey, Maester Payne, are you listening? Can you hear me? I just wanted you to know this. I'm not going to go off in this video, but I've been talking to two women that I don't know, but I have met. One of them is Claire Gray, and I can't remember the other one's name. God bless you, ma'am. I can't remember it right now. But we have gone down the rabbit hole with the veil, and we're going to talk about it next video.
Yeah, I've heard. Awesome.
If I could just stick to the scene, though, sorry for interrupting. I had one last thought on something that was made, or a change that was made from the books to the TV show within Davos and Salador Sand meeting, actually. I don't know if you guys recall, but in the books, I do believe that Salador leaves or he quits Stannis' cause after they're at the wall. and after the fact that, after Stannis is finally able to pay Salador for his services, whereas here it seems like Salador left Stannis's cause earlier in the series and now is coming back to his fold, which is interesting. Did you guys pick up on that, or?
I did not, but that makes sense because I guess that's how he helped Stannis get up there to help Jon.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, exactly. In the books, that's how he does get Stannis up there in the first place. But it's just strange that they made this change, because I wonder if Salador's son is going to not betray, but I guess give up or leave Stannis' service later on a second time, because in the books it happens at the very end of A Dance with Dragons where he abandons Stannis' cause.
I can't answer that.
Well,
Okay.
as far as I did not remember that, so thank you for pointing that out, Charlie. But Salador, if we presume Salador helps Stannis at least get his men to the wall, because he only has 32 ships. That's 1,000. That's 100 people a ship. Can you do that? It makes sense for me to anyway. Whatever Salador is saying helps with in order to get Stannis to the wall. It makes sense, in my opinion, for Salador after that to get paid and go, y'all don't need me.
Well, here, if I can jog your memory, remember when Davos is dropped off at White Harbor?
Yep.
That's the point when Salador San basically leaves the cause, because he basically lets Davos disembark from his ship to go land at White Harbor. Then I think Salador goes to the Stepstones or the Stepstones to go and engage in piracy or something like that.
Okay, which is okay,
Yeah.
which we need, but and I'm not sure how Davos will get to White Harbor without Salador's help, but to me it still fits perfectly into the story.
Oh, it still fits.
Stannis get to the wall. Stannis is running out of money anyway. Davos asks Salador for a last opportunity, and Stannis doesn't really need the money near the end, because by the time Stannis, at the end of this 5th book, by the time the rest of the world is fucked. King's Landing is there's snow everywhere but in Dorne, and even in Dorne, it's probably pretty soon going to be covered in snow. So there's no more payment in my mind. Anybody's food, they're going to want to keep it.
I disagree with that, James, because they're collecting swords and everything with the wildlings. He's still out of money. Remember, they're going to trade the jewels and armbands and things.
True.
Yeah, he's still out of money.
No, I agree that he's out of money, but the importance of money, I thought was your point, which is apparently still prevalent since Jon's taking all the wildlings' gold and stuff like that. If I can make a couple of points, one thing is talking about the aspect of the public sphere. The trial was public, but Braavos is not only this banking system, which we already kind of presume is in the back door rooms, but it literally is in the back door room. We're not even shown them entering the building. We're not shown them being guided through. We're just kind of presented with this building. We can't even see outside the windows, really. There's a bunch of doors. We don't know where the other people come from, and it's only Davos and Stannis in there. This is meant to feel like an extremely isolated back room, and I felt like it's not said, but the Tycho Nestoris and the guys that came out with him either had a lot of other stuff going on or were intentionally keeping Stannis waiting. Point being that it seems really isolated, which is in contrast to the public we get at the end of this episode. Also, if I could add, did y'all notice the broken sword of the soldier? That directly mirrors the broken wooden sword of Syrio Forel.
Good.
Very good image.
Good.
I loved Salador San. I just wanted to add that the joke was not funny. It's funny, but it's not Game of Thrones funny, and I think that's the part that makes it funny. But Salador San can tell a joke. And if the last thing you were talking the laws of gods and men, we were told in the episode before this, I think it was the episode before this, about how the banks are their own temple. Basically, money is its own god, and that it's apparent, but it really is. And when he says the numbers don't lie, as if numbers are completely objective. Well, yeah, but you decide what value you put on it, which is entirely subjective. Just wanted to put that out there.
No, very good thought, very good thought. One last thought I had about this scene, actually about the episode as a whole. Was it just me, or did it seem like Davos and Stannis reached Braavos awfully fast, given the wider events taking place in the world? I don't know if events at the Dreadfort were meant to mirror things occurring at Braavos, for instance, but it did seem a little strange that it took, at least from what I understood, such a long time for Yara to reach the Dreadfort, whereas Stannis and Davos took them really not that much time at all, at least from what I gathered.
Yara is sailing upriver, though, is she not? Or is she open water?
It was open water, and then it was upriver, I do believe.
Right.
I don't know.
Dreadfort is on the opposite side of the continent.
So she came up through the rivers, yeah. She even said she's coming up through the Whispering River. Or Weeping River, I think it was. Yeah.
But even Bravo seems quite far away. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
I
I think
agree.
we suspend our disbelief on
I don't think it's just you at all, Charlie. I think a lot of people felt that way. I know what the Flick mentioned it. I think Konstantinos Liturgis, one of the two, mentioned it. I can't remember.
If I can say another thing, I loved it when Davos throws Solidor the coin pouch, and then, which was beautiful, by the way. I've never seen anything like that. And then
We were talking about that too.
it was beautiful. It's just gorgeous. But then he says, the rest of it I left with your wife, and Solidor's, you're not my friend, my friend.
Remember that too. That's going to play into something I talk about later.
Okay.
I'll keep it in mind. Any more thoughts for this scene?
The only other one I wanted to say is Stannis has no personality. There is no charisma in this man. And Steve Delane played it so well.
Davos literally was his wingman. He was trying to, pump up this guy, trying to sell his product, in a sense, to the bank.
If I can add something to what you just said, Mama, to me, I understand why you say that, and I agree. But to me, Stannis has a boatload of charisma, a boatload of passion. He just bottles it all up and funnels it into one. He doesn't want to show emotion, like the scene with, and I mentioned this in a previous video, the scene with his wife, where he's like trying to tell her he cheated on her. He's like, you don't understand, because it's all the pent up everything, and we get it in this scene when he's basically shunned by Tycho Nestoris, and he looks at Davos like, you bring me here groveling to these people who don't give a shit about me?
Well, let me put it this way. I wouldn't marry him hoping it's going to change in one lifetime. May have to be reincarnated a few times before he reaches the level where he actually shows charisma.
Fair enough. Any other thoughts, folks?
No.
Alrighty, so let's go and talk about events at the Dreadfort. So finally, episode 6 in this season, we finally get Yara Greyjoy back in the show. She leads her relatively few Ironborn soldiers in a sneak attack on the Dreadfort, and as in order to reclaim Theon or Reek. Yara basically finds Theon locked away in the kennels with the dogs, but Theon is reluctant to accept her help or want to leave, because it seems like he thinks that she has been sent by Ramsay to trick him. He also refuses to acknowledge his actual name and keeps telling his sister that his name is Reek, of course. Before they can flee, Ramsay and a group of his men corner the Ironborn, and Ramsay releases his hounds on these invaders. And basically, upon returning to their rowboats, Yara tells her men that Theon is dead. In the next morning, Ramsay rewards Reek with a bath. Ramsay tells Reek that he requires his assistance in taking Moat Cailin, I think, and that in order to comply with his father's command, he will need Reek to play the role of someone who he is not. That is Theon Greyjoy, very, very ironically. I had a few thoughts on this scene. I don't know if you guys want me to just go ahead and shoot.
Do it.
Alrighty. Yeah. First thought, and I brought this up in my own video review. I didn't mention this in this recap, but of course the scene also begins with Ramsay as he is having sex with Miranda. But when he goes down to the kennels, there's blood all over his chest. Now, at first, I was wondering if this was from her, like maybe he killed her, or maybe it was from them engaging in some very interesting sex, I guess, or it was, you know, maybe the easiest answer would be that it's just from some Ironborn who he fought on the way there. I originally thought that there were only a few Ironborn, though, and I thought they were all with Yara in the cellar, or in the kennels before he showed up, so that kind of didn't make sense to me. But I do also think it would be strange if Ramsay were to kill one of his, I guess, women before he, like, I guess in the bedroom, rather than have them hunted down by like dogs or whatever his usual ritual is. And I also think that in this case we would probably know of it, or it'd be made a lot more obvious to us if he indeed had killed Miranda, kind of to show the extent of his sadistic ways. We've all discussed how I think we all agree that Miranda is going to die by his hands at some point, kind of to show just how merciless he is. So yeah, that was my thought on that specific scene, or that specific moment. I had another thought that I brought up in my own review, and I kind of want to expand on it because a few people did make comments on my video regarding this, and I want to address this in a little bit more details. Well, first of all, I guess I can talk about the significance of the bath as, I guess, a location of sexual energy, if I can use that term, like I mentioned in my previous video. In the previous scene, like I said, we had Salador San, and he's in the baths of Bravos, and he's basically hooking up with, you know, a group of prostitutes, and it's a very, very, you know, sensual, like, erotic scene. Well, maybe not to us, but maybe I'm sure to him it was. And then here in this scene, we have a bizarrely homoerotic connection or thing going on between Ramsay and Reek, where Ramsay, you know, orders Theon to strip and go into the bath as a reward for not betraying him. And also the way he looked at Reek when, you know, he took off his undergarments was very, very interesting, I guess, to say the least. I do think that this scene was intentionally kept ambiguous, though, whereas the earlier one was meant to, you know, emphasize the sexual nature of the bath. But I do think it was also, the first scene was meant to, you know, kind of pinpoint the sexual undertones of the bath in this later scene, or in the scene right after that first one, if that makes any sense. I also felt that Ramsay had a slightly detached expression when he was having sex with Miranda, which almost seemed to me like he was emphasizing which almost meant to emphasize, I felt, that there was some kind of bizarre and creepy form of tenderness between him and Reek in this scene. A person commented in my video and made the comment that, you know, maybe Ramsay is I guess is gay in denial, and this is his weird way of coping with an identity that, you know, is not really okay in this world, or it might not be fully acknowledged or seen as correct. That was a comment he made, and it made me think a little bit. But I also think that, you know, it made sense in the sense that given that Ramsay can tell Theon or tell Reek to do whatever he wants, and Reek will probably just obey without needing any reward or anything in return, means that, you know, Ramsay did not need to bathe Reek or like pump up his ego or make him feel okay to pretend to be Theon in the first place, if that all made sense to you guys. I'll end it there. I have a thought about Yara in events to come, but I will bring that up after because I think I threw a lot at you already, so I'd like to hear your thoughts.
If I can address the bath scenes, we've seen a few really important bath scenes. We saw
Agreed.
a scene between Viserys and the prostitute when she's kind of trying to pump him about what it was like way back when. And it was used for exposition, but it was also used in terms of his power over her and shut the hell up, woman, and do what you're supposed to do. We've seen that incredible bath scene between Brienne and Jaime. We've also seen the bath scene where Dany was in that very unique gold-looking tub where when Dario comes in. I think there is something going on with the either purification or confessional kind of thing that happens with a bath and water and cleansing. But, you know, I mentioned it before, and y'all said, really, to me, I definitely think that Reek has been sexually abused by Ramsay. I mean, I clear. And I guess that's
Agreed.
what I say about that. Also, I thought it was interesting that he's, as an Ironborn, you know, he can be kind of revitalized by being born again with water. So we'll see.
That was a good point. I like that.
Yeah, I personally thought that. I know it's not a throwaway scene, so let me clarify before I go into that. I really, if there was one weak part of it, I just thought this scene was it, and I thought, you're not really doing this. We already know he's damaged, big deal. there had to be a reason why they threw this in at now. I just didn't like the scene very much. I didn't think it was directed well. The acting was fine. Especially with the unlocking of the dogs and stuff, I thought, why are we here? Why are we doing this? We already get it.
Well, I think we get to see Theon also take on the role of the dog when he bites Yara. He ends up. So I think that was the play with the dogs there. He's almost feeling like he is the dog, although Reek. I have something more on the later part of the scene. If James has anything to talk on now.
I'll wait. Go for it.
To pretend to be someone you're not. That is pretty much every single person in this episode. That's what they're doing. Every single person is either being someone or something that they're not. And we can go through the list at the end. I'll touch on them as we go. But it's pretty astounding.
When you say that, do you think Ramsay's pretending to be something he's not?
Well, he is. He's claiming that he's the natural son of Bruce, right?
Yeah.
So it's small, but he's doing that. Yeah. The very beginning, you got Stannis playing as king when he's actually not yet technically the king. Davos is a smuggler playing at night. It goes through the list, through each person. Tywin, later on, when he asks about how much it costs, 10 dragons, give him 100. He's pretending to be rich. The theme goes throughout the whole episode, except for our man Tyrion. Tyrion's owning up to who he is.
That's a great point, MP.
That's actually a really good point. Good observation, yeah.
And we'll touch on the bits as we go through. Like even the Salvador Sand thing, when he introduces the girl Lara, it's like, I'm not Lara. That's Laura. You're not my friend, my friend. They touch on it so many times throughout this episode. It's unbelievable.
And if you want to add one more thing to it, and I'm speaking as an atheist here, the laws of gods and men were kind of personal perspective. Gods and men pretending to be something they're not. If that
and
makes
women.
any sense.
And I think it's also who we're judged by, who we let judge us. Stannis is going there to be judged by them. Tyrion's judged by everybody else. It's who you present yourself to in what way, sort of thing. I think they're touching into aspects of that anyways.
That's it.
There is a lot of it. We'll get into it as we go.
That's a real point, and if I can say, there are very few people who are true to their core values inside, and I think the Hound is one of them, and so is Tyrion.
Davos.
Well, there's certain people that are left out of this whole episode. It's been pointed out, Claire Gray actually told me, there's no Starks. It's the first time there's never been a Stark in an episode.
Let me tell you something. Claire Gray is a brilliant woman.
She's pretty smart.
Agreed. Great insight all the time. And that's a good point, actually. There's no Starks this episode. This whole season, actually, to me, just felt like the Lannister show. I mean, everything's almost always happening at King's Landing. The events are really focused on, the people there for once in this whole series. I think for the past 3 seasons, it felt anyway to me like the main characters, or the central characters, were the Starks and Daenerys to a certain degree as well. Now things are really focusing on events at King's Landing, and it's kind of a twist for many of us who watch the show and love it, or are Stark fans. Any other? Did you want to share your thoughts, James? I have something I'd like to share about this scene, but I'll let you go first.
I've got quite a lot, so if that's okay.
Go nuts.
In the initial part about Theon and Yara, I felt the same way my mom did, but mainly because it felt so. There have got to be more people at the Dreadfort to fight them, and it's such a claustrophobic thing. I feel like they could have just flooded the next room with people to block them all. It seemed really odd, but I think we can give Game of Thrones the benefit of the doubt for the most part in this thing. And we all are. None of us give a shit. We're all going to be watching the next episode. So, but it is worthy of nitpicking But to me, the importance of this scene was we get Yara saying he's dead, which is huge. In the books, the most recent thing we get with Yara and Theon is Yara telling Stannis she's going to behead, let me do it. He deserves the death he's supposed to get from me. Also, it gave the opportunity for the reward, which I think they played the torture aspect of it perfectly, because we needed to see. This gave us one more. This is the first time the viewers truly understand the depth of which Ramsay is being manipulated, because that's his sister, the only person in the world, arguably, who still has any connection that they hold valid to him, and he can't bring himself to go with her. And the reward was completely justified following that, because he has. Ramsay wasn't trying to trick Theon in that situation, and Ramsay needed to teach Theon, you've been a good boy. Good boy. Here's a treat. And it was a bath. One of the most basic things we have. I mean, it's water in a basin. That's it.
But it's important to him because he's Ironborn.
Well, you mentioned the importance of bathing, but you didn't say what you said last night when we talked about this, Mom, which was Jane Poole. The scene with Jane Poole, Theon and Jane Poole, the bath scene in the books with Theon and Jane Poole,
Right.
which was a big connection. But again, the only issue I have with that initial section was the claustrophobia of it and how it didn't make sense that they were getting away. And that was kind of almost, I excused it because I figured that I thought it was Moat Cailin. I thought he was already at Moat Cailin, and that's why he didn't have many men, because he'd already won the battle and he lost a lot of men. But it was the Dreadfort, so it made no sense to me. Which means let's not forget that Moat Cailin is still happening. That'll be happening soon. The Yara part where she says Theon is dead, Mom mentioned the Ironborn aspect of it. The saying goes, what is dead may never die. It comes back harder and stronger, and he's been told to be Theon. And he will come back stronger and harder, because the role he thinks he's supposed to play is the role of a badass. It's more badass than he ever thought before. Because he told him, you play the role of Theon Greyjoy. And that is the role he could not play earlier because he didn't understand it when he arrives at the Iron Islands. He's not quite what they wanted. Now he can play it.
James, that's a great point, because, and I didn't think about it before, but he didn't even really know who Theon was. He kept looking up to Robb, and he wanted to be a Stark. He couldn't figure out where his place was in the world. This way, he's been stripped down to the basics and comes back as he is supposed to be, and he will rise as Theon Greyjoy in a strong sense. It reminds me of the lines attributed to Sansa, which is, my skin has turned from porcelain to ivory to steel.
To add to what I think it was Charlie said earlier, that he's headed, Ramsay needs him for Moat Cailin. He never actually says it's for Moat Cailin.
Oh, so, it's Winterfell.
But it's assumed, isn't it?
There's nobody at Winterfell, Mom. Nobody's going back to Winterfell until the last book, basically, the next to last book. But the castle, there's a castle with bad people. There's no one at Winterfell. So maybe he's talking about Moat Cailin. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I thought he was thinking Ironborn. I'll send him back to the Iron Islands and get him to get in with them. But and also, it's a beautiful thing that Yara is obviously going to head back to the Iron Islands, and I bet the first thing that she sees is Euron's ship and sees her dad dying, and hears her dad is dead, and the Kingsmoot, I bet, is the beginning of the next season. Which means still going
you can also argue that that's why Theon got the bath, is they're getting him ready. They can't send him in stinking if he's going to be playing himself.
No question.
I mean, I agree with all the symbolism and everything like that, but there's also Theon's arc when we originally see Ramsay, when he lets him go and brings him back to the same place. That actually mirrors Theon's bigger arc throughout the whole episode, at least up until that point. I thought it might actually be what you guys are saying now. When he gets back to the beginning, he's going to be bigger and stronger.
Yeah,
Well,
we don't know because he's pretty much in the position he's in there now in the books, except for saving Shane Poole, and he is staying in his hands. If I could add, excuse me, that I was a little worried that somebody was saying online that they might be cutting out Euron and Victarion. It had me a little paranoid for a bit, but obviously they're just moving the King's Moot to next season, which means they're doing them. I'm hoping that the article I read and cannot find now was correct and that they had cast Euron and Victarion, because I really do want Mads Mikkelsen to play Euron, and that was the rumor going around. But who knows? As far as the wounds on Ramsay, that to me, those aren't wounds. I didn't see. To me, rewatching it, and I'm sure there are people that disagree with me, those are blood spurts. I didn't see a single thing I would call a scar, not just underneath the blood, but on his body. It looked like he had never been scarred, and that's juxtaposed obviously with Reek, who has an X right here, almost like he's been branded with the Flayed Man. So to me, that'll be explained either in the next episode or the one after it by Ramsay, or something involving Ramsay, that girl's dead, Miranda, or at least being tortured to an extreme extent. Also, she choked Ramsay in that sex scene, which we thought was a slap, or maybe it was a slap originally in the preview, in the trailer for this season of Game of Thrones. There was a picture of Miranda having on top of Ramsay having sex with him, and she slaps him. At least it appears that way. But my mom was like, it can't be Miranda's blood because she slaps him, and we haven't gotten that scene yet. I think that they cut that out partly and then replaced it with the choking, and we might even find out that was the straw, that she tried to choke him and he didn't want her to do that. I don't know. He seemed so distant during the sexual thing, almost as if he's playing her. He wants her to feel safe and secure and turned on so that later he can use it against her.
She can't possibly think that he's safe. I mean, she's seen him do all kinds of things to women in Reek. I think she's still alive because I think that slap scene is going to come back in.
I think she is still alive. I didn't say dead. I just think she's being tortured. Last little thing. As far as the sexual energy goes, I think y'all bring up a great point, which I had not partially thought about, but it's very possible that Ramsay is meant to be a play. Martin is saying this is what happens when a society forces someone to hide who they really are. Like you were talking about, Maester Payne, really. Because if Ramsay is gay and feels like he cannot exert it, there might be some frustrations that built up on it, let alone who his dad is. And that may build up on all of this. But to me, and I'm speaking from my own perspective now, even though I completely understand where y'all are coming from, Ramsay is not sexual in the sexual sense. I don't think Ramsay really gets anything out of sex in the way we understand it. It is solely he can he can get an erection, I'm sure. He can put it in something, but to me, it's all about the game. It's when he's having sex with her, the only reason he has an erection is because he's thinking, in a week, I'm going to destroy her, and she thinks everything's okay. To me, that's what it is. But
a little different than Joffrey.
Do what?
A little bit different than Joffrey.
Yeah. And to add to what y'all were saying, though, to counter me, we had Renly and Loras in the first books and the second books, and Renly was openly gay and could have been king, and Loras was openly gay and had absolute love for it. I say openly gay. Open's not quite what they were, but they were able to be who they are. At least on an individual level. And if Renly would have been king, arguably it would have been okay to be open. But we're certainly going to have some homosexual characters at the end of these novels because he has played on it. So if more than Loras, in my opinion. And last little bit I'd like to add, I'm not buying in on this, but it's something to be thought about. When Ramsay orders Theon to lower his pants, and Ramsay looks at it with this like sick pleasure of, look, that's my art. Basically, I'll invite her. That's
what I got from it.
But
okay.
Well, I'll let y'all discuss.
I'll let you finish. Yeah.
But basically, even though it could easily be that it is, look at my work of art, isn't that beautiful? I think it is entirely possible, though not plausible, that Reek still has his penis.
That's exactly what I wanted to say.
And
I hope so. Yeah.
and that if that's true, then Ramsay has somebody else's penis sent to the Iron Islands. He convinces Reek, don't look at it, don't touch it. If you look at it or touch it, I will torture you. You do not have a penis, Reek. You never had a penis, as far as I'm concerned. And I could see him, I could see that being possible. My mom's of the opinion that, I'll get her back in here hopefully soon. She's of the opinion that Reek is intended to be some sort of pious individual at the end, somebody whose celibacy forces them in.
Like a Baylor the Blessed?
Yeah. We're talking about whether Reek has a penis or not.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Can I just add a couple of things? I'm going to step outside for a second. Number one, I don't think he has a penis. You and I have talked about this. I think it was very clear what happened. But
if you're going to change topics, I think they were about to say something about the penis thing.
Well, go ahead first, LaDonna. I want to hear what your thoughts were, and I'll voice my opinion.
Personally, I don't think he's sexual towards women or men. I think that he has emasculated. He feels Ramsay feels diminished by his father Roose, and he gets power over Theon by taking his penis and still using him in a way. I'm sure he's, having anal sex and still torturing him. But I don't think he has a penis. I think it's Ramsay's way of kind of taking power back that he can't get from his father. I also wanted to say I think that Theon is like taking a page out of the Manchurian Candidate book. I mean, he's going to be used as kind of a double spy. He's taken away his identity, but put him back in his body so everybody will still recognize him as Theon, which essentially is what the Manchurian Candidate did.
And we're not really told that in the books, which means that this could be revealing something we're not supposed to know in the books, because Theon has reintroduced himself. So there may be some sort of trigger that Ramsay is waiting to use with Reek. I don't know.
Well, also in the books, James, when Ramsay has his honeymoon night, what a nightmare, with Jane Poole, he basically tells her to Ramsay tells Theon to warm Jane Poole up for him, and he says, I don't know what you want me to do. I don't have a penis. He doesn't say it, but we know what he meant. And he says, use your mouth. So he doesn't have a penis. I mean, he just doesn't. So.
Even if he did, Ramsay would have to have convinced him he does not. So that scene would still make sense.
Also, just because, LaDonna was here, the whole veil thing last week, I was just thinking last night, I don't know if it plays or not, but the opposite symbol, the masculine, what about the Tower of Joy? And what about castration? Because Ned tore it down.
Interesting. If I can play into that very briefly on the veil, and I'm not going to go into it now, it would take me an hour, but I think the veil is a symbol of two things, fertility and infertility, and that Liza is twisted and contorted and is basically infertile except for a damaged weakly child, whereas we've got the bloody gates, and if you look at the veil castle, it looks like it's two legs, and where does Liza throw people out to their death? Right through her legs, which is a twisting of birth, which is where we push children out to their life. And I think the fact that Sansa is there and becoming an adult woman, stronger, all of that is playing into this. And of course, I've talked about Sansa's fertility later, but I'm not going to go into that. But I do think you're right. And also, we've got the castration themes with maybe Varys, who I think is a woman, but also the Unsullied. But James, I respect you, but I think he has no penis.
I'm not saying I agree with it. It's just an idea.
Yeah, I had a few thoughts. I've kind of lost a number of them because we went all over the place there. Okay. Yeah, this episode did make me wonder, or made me question whether or not Theon had his penis still, because it was a sort of thing where, the fact that he didn't have one was so emphasized or, so highlighted but we don't actually get to see any proof of it. Not that I'm saying we have to see his penis, but I'm saying, it just seemed, it was the kind of thing that just seemed so emphasized that maybe they could throw a twist at us and say, oh, he has one at the end. He has one after all, I don't know. That's I guess had some doubt on that specifically.
At this point, let's call it Schrodinger's penis.
Let's call it that.
A lot.
The reason, though, going back to something you said a while ago, James, as to why I mentioned Moat Cailin, though, is because, and I like what you're hypothesizing here with what's going to happen with Yara, but I actually originally thought that she was going to go to Moat Cailin for a while, and of course, Ramsay would send Reek there. The castle would inevitably fall to the Bolton's men, and then she would be sent on her goose chase or her run around the northern countryside, and until she's eventually captured by Stannis, as it occurs in, I think, the end of book 5 or beginning of book 6. I can't quite remember if it was in the previews where she's with them, but I forget if she actually gets captured in book 5 itself.
I think it's book 6, but I can't remember.
Yeah. Anyway, my hunch was that maybe she's going to get excluded completely from the Kingsmoot, and Victarion and Euron and all of them will have the Kingsmoot without her, more or less casting her aside because she is believed to have been captured or lost or whatever the reason is. That was my hunch. And it would also kind of fit into the idea that Ramsay, he chases down his women. Well, here he might be chasing down Yara in this case.
Okay,
that was just my thought.
I'm not going to agree with you on that, with all due respect, because I think it is absolutely essential, and I truly believe Martin has thrown in the Kingsmoot for the purpose of her being there to say, I am the rightful person to take this over if you look at it from a feminist approach. And we're seeing that with Dany and all kinds of things. So I think it's important that Yara be at the Kingsmoot.
I'm not saying it won't happen. I just thought maybe that could be a direction the show might take it in. I mean, they have thrown us some curveballs in the past, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not decided on that one yet, but I will agree with you. It would be epic if they did keep her in that scene. James?
You just gave me an interesting thought, Mama. You mentioned Schrodinger, referencing
whether the penis is there or not.
Theon's penis. Well, we actually have a Schrodinger's cat, because until we see Callan alive or dead, we don't know.
He keeps sleeping all the time? Is that what it is?
Schrodinger's cat is the idea that there can be a thing can exist, a thing can not exist, but there's also a middle ground. So that's the really simplistic version of something that's basically quantum theory. So, okay. But the idea that if you put a cat in a box and you set a thing in there that could possibly kill the cat but might not, until you open the box, you don't know whether the cat's dead or alive. And
I see. Okay. I thought you meant a literal cat that you had at home. That was, I don't know. Mine went in a whole other direction. Any other thoughts on this specific scene, folks?
Where were you guys?
Same
we're
scene.
still at Drakeford.
Okay. No, I'm good.
Okay. Shall we address my favorite character, Her Majesty the Queen of Meereen?
We should indeed, Charlie. We should.
Already. And I will. So, of course, now we're at events in Slaver's Bay. We see one of Daenerys' dragons attack a group of goats led by a farmer and his son. When that scene occurred, I was convinced that the dragon, Drogon, was going to kill the kid, just like it happens in the books, but of course that did not happen. It killed the goat. So while she receives, supplicants, the farmer arrives and presents a bag of charred goat bones to Daenerys and her advisors, and she promises to pay him 3 times the worth. And after he departs, we finally get to see Hisdar Zolorak, and he requests the right to bury his father's remains, as he was one of the Myrnese masters who was crucified under Daenerys' orders. Lorak also points out that his father was one of the masters who was against the crucifixion of the slave children, but it was killed due to Daenerys' justice, and Daenerys, of course, reluctantly agrees. I think this was pretty interesting because now we know that I guess there wasn't really any methodology behind her crucifying these masters. But it is also interesting that, she does at least in my opinion, appear to express some sense of remorse or realization that she might have done things a little bit wrong in that setting. What else was there? I also felt that Hisdar Zolorak as a character came across as much more likable in this one episode than he has throughout the entire books released so far, which was quite interesting. And I wonder if they're going to play on that change, you know, potentially make a love interest blossom between Daenerys and Hisdar Zolorak. And the reason why I bring that up partially is because, LaDonna, you've mentioned that, you know, you're looking forward to seeing the Green Grace, Galaza Galore in the TV show. I'm starting to wonder, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm starting to wonder if they are going to cut that role out of the TV show entirely, or if just for this one season maybe. Because if I do recall, the Green Grace was, you know, the person to encourage Daenerys to marry Hisdar, and Hisdar, of course, wasn't that likable, at least as far as I was concerned in the books. So I'm kind of wondering about that specific aspect of this for sure. Another comment I really feel it's important to make, and I made this on my own video, again, is the fact that this scene also reflects back on the title of the episode, The Laws of Gods and Men. In this scenario, you know, you have the shepherd go to Daenerys almost like she's a god, and he basically is praying to her in a really weird sense. You know, he's basically saying, you know, I hope I haven't displeased you. I hope I haven't displeased my god. And, you know, for his praying, she rewards him 3 times of his losses. So it kind of fits in that whole sort of miracle dichotomy in this context. And I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, many, many years in the future, if Daenerys doesn't become a god to these ex-slavers of Meereen in a sort of context. I don't know. Just a thought I had. Also, of course, you know, I think the scene is also reminding Daenerys, the god, as a god, that, you know, it's a hard task to maintain, especially, you know, when your judgments might not always seem righteous, just like in the case of Hisdar Zolorak. And also the fact that, you know, it takes a lot of work to rule a people as a god, just as she seems to. You know, obviously she's living right at the tallest pyramid of Meereen, which is, at least in my opinion, it seems like a very, very symbolically religious a religiously significant monument in this city. So I think she's kind of realizing, you know, the fact that she has over 200 people going to visit her in that one day, in my mind, to worship her in a sense, obviously to ask for her laws or her justice. But it shows her that, you know, being a god isn't all that easy, considering you have so many people visiting you all the time and expecting you to pay attention to them as their god. One last thing, of course, that came up in this scene, as far as it relates to the episode of the title, The Laws of Gods and Men, well, of course, is, you know, the laws of Meereen, the laws of traditional burial rites that Hisdar is requesting. You know, I think he presents himself as a simple man of Meereen who just wants his values, his traditions respected, so that he can bury his own father, as they have been done for so long. So it kind of presents, you know, this man wanting to maintain his understanding of his own godly, or his own laws as far as they come to him in terms of, and I guess of a godly nature, if that made sense, and how Daenerys, as the new god of Meereen, more or less reacts to this conflict from old versus new. So apologize if that didn't make sense. I kind of was talking off the top of my head there, but awesome. Made my points there. So
yeah.
Again, I liken it to the theme of she's sitting in judgment of them. She's there to judge them. They're petitioning her or whatnot. Also, to the other thing too, she's playing at ruler. She's not yet a ruler. She's only playing at it. She gets shut down pretty much instantaneously with Hisdar, and so, you know, she's got a lot of learning to do still. And that was my 2 cents.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought I froze for a second. No, that's an interesting point. She did get shut down, but I mean, she was still able to maintain a sense of being above Hisdar, though. It was weird because he was groveling to her. He was, you know, presenting himself as a servant, but he was still able to convince her to change her mind on something. He, the simple man, was able to change the laws of a god in this context. Obviously, she's not a god, but you know what I'm saying in terms of the images that are
absolutely
portrayed here. Did you guys have any thoughts on this scene?
Jamie?
Well, mentioning about her being a god, in the long list of things that she's described as unburnt, the mother of dragons. It also said something about queen of the Dothraki Sea. She's not no queen of no Dothraki Sea. she was married to a Khalasar, but it doesn't work the same way. As soon as her Khalasar is dead, the next strongest Khalasar takes over. That was the shattering of her lineage. She thought this kid was going to be the next dragon, the stallion that mounts the world, but she claims herself to be queen of the Dothraki Sea. That to me was, to reference what we were talking about 2 episodes ago, the Hitler-esque sort of thing. She's kind of propagandizing. And about when you give 3 times the amount of damages to an individual, it's called treble damages. Barristan Selmy was not happy about that. You can see him in the background go, what? And he's been privy to many council meetings over and over and over again. And we know at the end there are 200 more people out there, and she's supposed to give 3 sets of goats to all of them for every goat.
Also, sorry, James, but sort of mirrors Tywin too, right? Overpaying. He gives them the 100 rather than 10. She gives them 3.
He just really wanted the Hound dead. But that's a good point too. And Varys wouldn't lie either. Varys says it'll take 10, and Tywin goes, give him 100.
He's playing at being rich.
Good point. He's playing at being rich, like she's playing at ruling. And in the same way, she's surprised that there's 200. I mean, this is why you have a Hand of the King, so that he can delegate these duties, so that somebody else can be sitting in that room. But at the same time, her hand, Jorah, plus Barristan, they don't really know how she would rule in these situations. So it's important that they watch her set precedent before they begin to act on her behalf. As far as, Charlie, you mentioned the dragon killing the goats and not the kid. I think all the book readers thought, oh, we're going to watch this kid roast in a second. But it was foreshadowing for it happening later, because they're not ready for the kid to get killed yet. The goat
I
is
agree.
for now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Later.
In the books, there is a procession of people dropping off goat bones, and isn't Anna right there? She's like,
Yeah.
oh, another one of you guys, but then it's the body.
And it never even occurs to her that the dragon's going to switch. So I'm sure he'll switch to cattle at some point, but then it kills a human. As far as the Histar Zolorak being set up the way he was, I think that's necessary, because in the books, her decision to marry Histar is more of a tactical thing, which will I'm sure play in that way, because the people will support Histar and think he's the right one for them, especially when he's pro gladiatorial combat. But they had to set him up as a kind of possible love interest, somebody she can respect, because she's going to have to make a choice between him and Daario. And the preview for the next season has a scene between Dany and Daario that implies they might be boning. It doesn't say that, and it actually might not even imply it, but they're alone in a room together. So Dany was definitely remorseful, but but that's the kind of remorse we want her to feel, because she needs to realize how much every act she does will be scrutinized later. Because we completely understand why she did it, but every single one watching the show who knows the depth of it was thinking that was a big mistake, because somebody there is going to have moral righteousness one way or another. But for the TV viewers who aren't aware of Hisdar's real nature, and we're not really in the books, we just know that he tried to kill Dany. So other than that, we really don't know what of him is truth and what of him is fiction. But he's meant to be compared to the goat herder, in my opinion. The goat herder walks in, won't make eye contact. He has his head down, and he won't even walk forward until he's set. He won't say a word until he's spoken to. He won't walk forward until he's told to, and he doesn't even get close to the steps. He has room to lay out the goat, and then he gathers it up real quick and leaves when he thinks. As opposed to Hisdar, who walks in and has, I guess, almost a slave speak for him. And Dany makes a point of saying, no, you speak for yourself. And then when he's allowed to speak for himself, he walks up onto the steps, almost past the guards on her left and her right, and speaks looking directly at her and says exactly what he wants to say, and is I mean, and he makes a damn good argument. I can't speak for everybody else. I can just speak for I'm a boy who loved his father. I thought this scene was perfectly well set up. Yeah, no complaints.
Good stuff. Any other thoughts on the scene? And LaDonna's out.
Mama. Maester Payne, you want to talk about this one while she tries to make it back?
I'm trying to think here. Let me see if I had anything else that I didn't touch on. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
The dragon is another character that is just being itself. Dragon ain't being fake. Everybody else is, not the dragon.
The dragon's free, though. The dragon's free to do what he wants. As soon as he's going to be enslaved, which will be interesting because, it kind of fits in this image of, Daenerys being the freer of slaves, yet she's enslaving her own children, or at least trying to in some degree.
Which plays directly into the theory that she is seeking the wrong thing and the dragons are her ultimate goal. She's subduing her children. And my mom and I were talking about this. Well, I'll go ahead and mention it now about Varys. Imagine that he is a Blackfyre Targaryen and that Aegon is his child because he is a female. Imagine Varys is a female, Aegon is his child. I know it's a stretch, but in my opinion, it's okay. Varys is a Blackfyre. That means he has, in a way, a right to the throne. Well, she's texting me. Sorry. All right. He has, in a way, a right to the throne, but he plays the mummer his whole life in order to put her son on the throne. That's like the complete opposite of Dany. Dany gives up her children in order to pursue her own interests. She even uses her children. Just side note, Targaryen, Blackfyre Targaryen, both female, maybe even ending up being a counterpoint to each other if Dany, my theory. But I think they're meant to be juxtaposed.
Interesting thoughts. I want to hear LaDonna's thoughts on a comment I made. I don't know what you guys think about the Green Grace being removed from the show. She didn't seem like her presence would be needed in this situation or scenario. I don't know.
Yeah, it's wait and see for me, I guess.
Fair enough. I'm trying to think of other things to bring up for this scene, but I think I've said all I needed to say.
We'll be sure to bring it up. She really didn't get to speak about Dany's scene.
That's the thing, yeah. That's why I'm hoping we can get reconnected with LaDonna soon.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next one while we do that. Let's not do Tyrion's scene. Let's knock out
the discussion scene, the small council
meeting, and Varys' scene with Oberyn.
Very well. Okay, so the scene basically starts off in King's Landing. This is the last region that has been dealt with in this episode. Basically, at a meeting of the small council, Tywin informs his counselors that Tyrion's trial will begin the afternoon. Lord Varys informs Tywin that Sandor the Hound Clegane has been spotted in the Riverlands, and Tywin orders a bounty on his head, as you guys mentioned. Varys also informs the council of Daenerys' conquest of Meereen, and Tywin finally decides to take measures to prevent her from potentially launching an invasion. I think the scene is interesting because it does reaffirm, just like in the past couple episodes, that Daenerys is a really big threat. But in the same way that it does that, of course, we have Cersei, seemingly not too worried about Daenerys. I think she just brushes Daenerys off as some girl halfway around the world with little baby dragons. And of course, that I think foreshadows events to come in most likely the next season when, she's really in charge of King's Landing and doesn't really do anything to stop or prevent Daenerys from potentially building up forces and crossing over, although, of course, she doesn't know that per se. But she doesn't seem worried about the possibility. One thing, I have a few things about this scene, actually. I guess I can preface my next... Actually, no. First thought is, during the council meeting, did you guys notice Oberyn's facial expression when Varys began to discuss the dragons and Daenerys?
Yeah.
The camera panned in on him, and he had a very, very intrigued look at his face.
Especially when Varys said that Jorah Mormont was no longer in his employ. Oberyn looks at him like, it didn't seem quite honest. which I thought was interesting.
I thought there was another interesting look too, and I don't know if it goes anywhere, but when Varys mentions the second sons, Tywin gives a quick look. I don't have any theories or anything like that, but I noticed it. Struck me as odd.
Interesting. I didn't pick up on that. Yeah, just to touch on what you just said, though, James, Tywin stating that Ser Jorah's dismissal was stupid. It was interesting because, that echoes back to things that happened in the first season, how events that occur in the past still affect things in the present. And, of course, Ser Jorah's own betrayal in this sense comes up. And I think this becomes significant at the very last part of this scene. I have to thank one of my commentators for bringing this up, but I was wondering who Tywin was writing to when the scene was taking place at the very end, because he asked Mace Tyrell for his paper and pen, or his ink and paper, or something of the sort. And he also asked Varys if he had his little birds in Marine. Now, I think this, could be one of a few options. I think he's writing to somebody in Marine, that's first of all, but I think he could be writing to a number of people. I definitely think it would be interesting if Tywin were at least somewhat responsible for playing some role in providing the Sons of the Harpies with some form of assistance in fighting against Daenerys. That's one possibility anyway. The other possibility is that he could be, and I need to thank Kevin Weldridge for this thought. Thank you, Kevin, for making this comment on my video, that perhaps Varys' little birds are meant to inform Daenerys of Ser Jorah's original intentions against her from, the first season, when, of course, he was meant to act as a spy against her, and I think also to assassinate her, if I recall, or maybe he wasn't supposed to kill her, but he was at least a spy against Daenerys for that first season, when he was acting as a spy for the crown. Because he also said that he thinks Ser Jorah being ratted out will be coming out in the next few episodes, this commentator that I'm speaking about. And I could certainly see Ser Jorah, his original intentions against Daenerys being revealed, and of course that causing him to be banished from Marine. So it would be interesting if Tywin Lannister were indirectly responsible for allowing that information to get to Daenerys, as opposed to Jorah Mormont.
Well, I think I got a little confused over what you were
Sorry,
saying.
I meant, I used Ser Jorah's name twice. I meant Barristan Selmy being the one to not find out the intentions, but somebody else finding out and informing Daenerys, as opposed to Ser Barristan as it happens in the books.
Well, it kind of is already implied by Barristan to Jorah in last, and that Barristan knows Jorah was a spy.
Barristan knows.
Yeah.
But he hasn't done anything yet, which would make me think that maybe he's going to keep his mouth shut and somebody else might be the one to blow the whistle.
I think Barristan's doing it.
You still think so?
I think it has to do with there being an issue that comes up and Jorah and Barristan disagreeing over what to choose.
Can I say one thing? We're about to have some bad weather, and I think that's why I keep timing out. I can hear it outside. So if I go out, I'll keep going, okay?
Sounds good.
We do want to hear your opinion, and Charlie had a question for you.
Yeah, last point before I'll let you and Maester Payne say something. LaDonna, who did you think Tywin Lannister was writing to at the end of this scene in the small council meeting? I presented a few options. I don't know if you were back when I mentioned them, but I'm curious to hear your opinion, and of course you guys as well.
I have no idea.
Okay, because I posited that maybe Tywin would be helping to instigate some form of uprising, like with the Sons of the Harpy, or maybe writing to somebody in Marine to make sure Daenerys is informed of Ser Jorah's betrayal in season 1.
Sorry about my mama's dog.
I like that, Charlie. I thought it was pretty good. I hope it plays out and we find out about it in later books for sure.
As do I.
Can I mention something briefly?
Okay, hold on. LaDonna, quickly.
If I can briefly mention something about that scene with Dany. First of all, she's already told Bodhi, hush. She's already told Jorah and Barristan to keep their damn mouth shut when she's making decisions. Remember, she told them that when she was dealing with the slave trader who got burned. Don't ever embarrass me in public. So they couldn't say anything to her when she was making that decision about the treble damages. The other thing is, I think it is setting it up for somebody coming to her and having a dead baby, a burned baby. That's coming. And as far as your God theory, I absolutely agree with you. These people lifted her above their heads. She is kind of a symbol of a godlike figure. even though we know she's not. And also I think that it mirrors kind of the Jesus Christ thing, where when he's making his travels, he tells people, I can't save everybody. You know, I'm doing the best I can. Give me a break. And also there was a scene, I think, with Jim Carrey in that God movie he did where he's sitting at his computer and he's getting all his supplications in, and it's just rolling down. Everybody's praying to God, praying to God. I can't help all of you. The other thing is, I think they needed his daughter Zolorak because they got to have attention for her in this romantic relationship with Dario. They've got to have it. So, you know, he was so insipid in the books. I'm like, oh my God, he's not even good in bed. But she marries him. I mean, really. And then she's got Dario who's swashbuckling. You know, they have to have that for the tension between them. So yeah. But I do think that she's made a horrible decision as far as trebling the damages, because people can now extort her for things. If they know they had her from the beginning 3 times the amount, what are they going to get when a kid gets killed? And then it's, of course, setting her up to be even more godlike when she gets on the back of that dragon and rides away. So,
good thoughts. Very good thoughts. How about the casting of the Green Grace? I mentioned that before you got logged out. Do you think?
I don't know, Charlie. I can see them leaving her out, but I think it's important to bring her in as the mystery figure behind the insurrectionists who are trying to take her down, the Harpies.
Right.
I also like the fact that they need to bring some older women in here. I think it's important. We've got Olenna, and the Green Grace is kind of like the mirror of her in a different area. I think they'll bring her in. Be curious to see who plays her, though. That'll be cool. Oh, I know, Helen Mirren.
There you go. Perfect casting choice. I would love to see her, the Green Grace and Helen Mirren, but we'll see. James, you wanted to say something, right?
Not on that scene. I think we were talking about
the scene after, yeah.
Well, I wanted to say that it seemed to me that Oberyn, they were obviously foreshadowing the conversation later with Oberyn and Varys when Oberyn is reacting in the council room with to Varys' words. That's foreshadowing of his conversation later with Varys. But I really do think he's reading in, and we know that he's going to die in 2 episodes. So they can build Oberyn knows what's going on with Varys, or has figured a whole lot out, and only reveal what they want us to know up to this point, because then he'll die, and that ends it. So we now know that Varys is from Lys, which is where Mama say it.
Illyrio went to, quote, if we can believe this, and I'm not sure I believe it, Illyrio went to Lys to find a woman who looked Targaryen to have a baby for him. That's the theory.
That's the theory. But we also know that they were both mummers when they were young together, so they would have known each other already. So,
unless it was a cover story, of course.
Unless it was a cover story, we also don't know why those hands are there. There's a possibility that they went and found somebody who looked like a Targaryen so they could pass it off as one, but the mother found out what they were going to do, killed the baby, they cut off her hands, and let her go, and then they decided, you know what, Varys, let's just do it with you. You're the true blood Blackfire.
James, can I interrupt for just one moment? I would like to introduce my beautiful daughter who's in the Air Force. This is Anna Lee.
Sorry to interrupt y'all.
Hello.
Hey, welcome to the review, the group review for Game of Thrones.
How are y'all?
We're good, we're good. It's not
Thanks.
too bad, actually. Just raining outside, and it's not too late, unlike usual, where we go on till midnight, but...
It's here.
If you're not in it, you're
I'm
not
sorry.
in it.
What are y'all discussing other part of Game of Thrones?
We're
We
discussing...
can't tell you, because you have not read the books.
Oh. We almost spoiled things there.
Hang on just a second, Jamie. We're discussing Oberyn Martell. Annalee, what do you think about Oberyn Martell? He's the swashbuckling guy with kind of the Spanish accent that has...
Oh, the one who, like, loves sex?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one.
She's 22 and a half. She can talk about this.
I don't know. I have mixed feelings. I think that if he could be evil, he will. Or if he will, well, I think he could be evil if he tried, honestly. If that makes any sense.
It does.
Because he does sound or look a little dark, in my opinion. But
he has dark motives.
Like able to kill.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think everyone does in Game of Thrones.
Good
Yeah.
insights.
You think Sansa can kill?
I think she can. I just think that she'd hesitate. So.
He who hesitates is lost.
I
love you.
Thank you for joining us for a split second, kiddo. With Oberyn in that scene, I feel like there is a question over whether Varys still has access to Jorah Mormont. I think that's sincerely a possibility.
That's a good point, James.
When Varys says that he doesn't have we've lost contact with Jorah a long time ago, Oberyn looks at him like, that was horseshit, and then later we find out that Oberyn can kind of read through Varys. It's a huge deal that we get Tywin saying that the Hound's got a $100 debt or price on his head. And let's see, I think that they are playing Mace Tyrell as like a prude, but that we don't really know what he thinks because he has to keep his mouth shut because he's constantly interrupted. And you mentioned Tywin asking for a quill and a pen, and he's all too happy to get up and do it. And apparently he's master of ships. It hasn't been said by anybody else, but he kind of says, no, we've all agreed it's me before you, and he's got this really deep voice. I like Mace Tyrell, even though we really haven't gotten much of him.
It's very... Go ahead, LaDonna.
Very briefly, I heard a little bit of an interview with him where he says he's smarter than he looks. But, we've read 5 books, and I haven't seen anything that indicates he's smart.
Because he doesn't get to talk.
Agreed. He reminds me a lot as being the polar opposite of Oberyn in many ways.
Why?
Well, I mean, Oberyn's, this very sexual, laid-back guy, and meanwhile, Mace Tyrell's very uptight, shies at any discussion of sex. I think in the next scene when Shay mentions that she was Tyrion's whore, he kind of balks back and goes, "You're his what?" His whore.
And that plays perfectly into them being on both sides of Tywin in that trial, judging, because those are the things that judge you. One is have you devoted your life to something, and were you passionate about it? That's Oberyn. The other one being, did you hold to the values did you succumb? And then there's Tywin in the middle, who is your fucking father. Those are the things you have to answer to in life.
Agreed. It kind of fits into the whole historical the history of warfare between Dorne and, of course, the Reach, or Highgarden, which is also quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I believe that Marjorie's mother was in the books, but if she wasn't, it kind of makes me wonder if Olenna didn't take out Marjorie's mother just so she could control Mace.
I also mentioned to my mom earlier that it was really funny when Mace Tyrell responded with that. You're his what? His whore. And he's just he looks straight and he's like, that's not good. But I thought it really funny because I couldn't help but think, well, Oberyn wouldn't give a shit, but the Tyrells would, the males, because could you ever picture a male Tyrell cheating on the female?
Oh.
Good point.
Very good point. I thought you were going to say the opposite for a second, and I was going to be like, wait a minute.
He reminds me of Dickensian characters. I mean, kind of like Fezziwig or something. I don't know. He looks like a Dickens character.
True. LaDonna, I kept meaning to ask you this question, and I've already asked James and Maester Payne. At the end of this scene of the Small Council, who do you think Tywin is writing to, or who do you think he's intending to write to?
I don't think it's Roose Bolton because I think that he's already done his thing with Roose.
Agreed.
Didn't give a crap about the North. He's stupid, but he's not doing that. It won't be Dorne.
It won't be Marine either, do you think? Because I made that comment. I don't know if you heard.
I did, but I haven't seen anything in the books to indicate that there's any... You think he might be stirring up the Harpies down there?
Potentially, because it came right after he asked Varys if he had his little birds in Marine.
How would Tywin have any power to do that?
Not necessarily power, but I mean, that's why I mentioned the whole idea with Ser Jorah, maybe stirring the pot there. Honestly, it was just a small thought. I mean, I couldn't really think of any other person he'd be writing to except for maybe in some very indirect way stir things up there. He also mentions, it's not yet time to attack that place. But he mentioned, I think, what was the comment he made? Something with respect to, he said eventually when it comes to that, we will act with force. But for now, he made it seem like they're going to do something more covert or less obvious. And it also came right after Tywin emphasizes how Joffrey's actions in the first season of dismissing Jorah Mormont were stupid in this very same scene. So it kind of makes me think, well, maybe they're also hinting at, actions that Tywin is performing right now will come to impact the future long after he is dead, or at least some short period of time after he's dead in some way. That's the only reason why I thought that. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, Charlie, you may be very, very right, because what I got out of the scene before the letter writing was that he started talking about the fact that she's got dragons, which he completely dismissed before. And it's like maybe he's getting his war strategy up. Of course, it ain't going to work, and I'm not sure it'll have long-lasting impact after he dies. But yeah, maybe he realized, there is a threat down here, and now that Rob's gone, maybe I ought to start making some moves around there. So that's a good point, Charlie. Well taken.
Thank you.
And I think that there's something to be said similar to that in Cersei's describing Dany as a child once again, because we know she's not a child. We've seen all the as my mom pointed out, she's been married and had a kid. She is no child anymore, and it's just beautiful to point out the inability for one continent to understand the goings on in another. Which is kind of lost a little bit in the fact that we get to Davos and Stannis arrive so quickly, and Yara takes forever. Anyway.
Precisely. No more thoughts, Maester Payne?
No, I'm good.
Alrighty, so shall we address the very interesting discussion that took place between Varys and Oberyn Martell?
Yes, please.
There's not really much to say, really. Varys also Varys basically meets with Oberyn in the next scene, and they're discussing, the state of affairs of things at the time in front of the Iron Throne. We learn a few things, like we know, of course, that Oberyn is a very, very observant person. He notices a lot of things about Varys. There are I felt missing a lot of interesting lines. Some that I can read a certain way, and others which kind of left me confused or still pondering what their meanings were.
Definitely.
In the typical, it reminded me a lot of the scenes between Varys and Peter Baelish, like in the last season. The scenes with these two characters where there's a lot of meaning that is given to us, but still said in a very ambiguous way, and in a way we're not really meant to fully understand sometimes, but that we might come to understand to mean something deeper in the future, of course. One line I actually liked, and it kind of fits into your theory on Varys as a woman, James and LaDonna. It was when Varys tells Oberyn to just call him only Varys, and then when I think when Oberyn inquires as to why, he states, "I am not actually a noble man," emphasis on the MAN part. "No one is under any obligation to call me Lord."
Cool.
Another thing was Oberyn states, "My paramour Ilaria would find you very interesting." Now, I don't know what that was meant to imply by that, or if it was just a statement thrown out there.
Well,
but maybe it hints at... What's that? It followed after Varys talks about how he'd gotten there. He says it's a long story, and I only tell people I trust.
Well, it also followed the previous scene with the council where Oberyn kind of implies that he has had sex in some way with an Unsullied.
Right.
But who were castrated, as is Varys. So obviously, it's playing on not just gay, straight, bi. It's also playing on gender roles, gender identities, and sexuality within those gender identities, cisgender versus.
And again, there's also the judgment aspect. He's prejudged Varys as one way or the other.
Very true.
Plus, you get the sub-theme of, I am not a lord. People think I'm a lord, but that's not what I am.
Good point.
I just say it goes through everything. I'm going to have a smoke now. I'll let you guys talk.
Everybody.
Alrighty.
That's because he's a Lady Blackfire.
Oh, also, Varys also says most of us aren't princes. He keeps emphasizing that he's not a prince, a male form of a lord or a ruler or whatever you want to emphasize.
Yeah, and
He
he
never
says
says anything about his
I'm not a lord. I'm not a nobleman.
noble man.
Noble woman. I'm a lady, and I'm
Yeah.
I think you
Well,
nailed that on the head.
yeah, and he also says, I'm not interested in men, probably because he's been done in some way, whether it's genital mutilation or whatever. And then he says, oh, you're interested in women. And he says, no. It works. I think he's a woman.
But LaDonna, do you think he was a woman who was not interested in anyone? Because I mean, do you think he would lie about not being interested in anybody? Because then if there was a relationship between him and what's his face from Pentos, wouldn't that kind of go against Maester Illyrio? Wouldn't that kind of go against what Varys is saying right then and there, potentially?
Not necessarily, because the word used was desire. Now that doesn't mean he can't have sex. It just means he can't have desire.
Agreed.
Which would go to feminine mutilation, where you can still have sex, but you don't really enjoy it.
I see.
If he is a Blackfire, giving up any role he might have in the kingliness, in claim to the throne, in order for his children to have it. He has no desire. She has no desire. It's all in her children versus Dany, who's the antithesis of that.
Well, yeah, but it also goes to the sexuality aspect of it as well. They can take away your clitoris and you can't have any pleasure, you can't have any desire, but you put it in your children to make them rise.
Right.
Still can't, and James, you mentioned it, I still can't figure out what those hands are. Those hands are going to be important, the ones that Illyrio keeps in a glass case in his house.
But my mom made a good point, which I don't think we've talked very much about on these videos. You can cut off a man's penis, and he can no longer have sex, but he can still, and it cannot have children as a result of that, because you need a method of transmission. But for a woman, you can remove her clitoris, thereby removing the pleasure center, but she could still have a baby. And
that's right.
And clitoris is removed across the world, still 70-something% in some nations.
Thank God, not in the United States.
Well, agreed. Although I think
likely not exist had it been done here.
I wouldn't make this. I
saw Charlie thinking that one over. The gears turning.
Well, no, because you mentioned this idea that a man loses his organ, so to speak, and he can't receive pleasure. I think some people might disagree with that. I don't know if I would personally, but some people might say, anal sex for men might count as a form of pleasure, given that there's the prostate and all that. I don't mean to get graphic, but
That's right.
It's true. And to add to that, when you remove
one at a time,
when you remove a portion of the body, the nerve endings, the part of your brain that controls the senses in that area gets slowly taken over by other areas of the body. So you can still get if your entire sexual pleasure is derived from your penis and your penis is cut off, you can still gain sexual pleasure elsewhere, generally in the same region. But and obviously the prostate, you nailed that point. Some men can orgasm from prostate.
They've also played with that pleasure thing with the Unsullied, who still go to brothels because they still want to be held. There's something to be said for human contact, even if it's not really completely sexualized. So.
That's fair, and it could speak to Theon in the sense if he is castrated, he could still become like an Unsullied. He could still rise. What does Edmund ever die? He could still rise up stronger and more powerful like an Unsullied, but just not have a certain aspect of a regular man, I guess. I've got to say, guys, I used to not at all agree with this theory that Varys could be a woman or a Blackfire potentially. I kind of dismissed it as a bit of a crackpot theory, but I think this scene is starting to get me to possibly, accept it as a possibility. I think, there is a chance that this could happen this way. So definitely, I think, you guys were onto something there, which I have to admit now. I also think it was interesting that last thing on this matter is that, it would be an interesting parallel between Varys and Egg from the Tale of Dunk and Egg. I don't think that they're literally connected in a strong way, but they're both bald. They're both, in a sense, hiding their Targaryenness through not having hair, which would be interesting if they did go that way with Varys.
Good point.
That's a great point.
And honestly, the hair, the connection to Aegon and the head being shaved are the only real reasons, and the way it fits into the story are the only real reasons my mom and I vie for the Blackfire thing. The woman, I think, in my mind, that's a done deal. Varys is a woman. I mean, I don't know, obviously, but to me, that's a done deal.
Well, if you want,
I'm
I'm gonna throw this in. I agree with everything everybody has said, and the thing that made me think Varys was a woman way back when in the second season was when he kneeled down and said, "If you want to play, you'll have to start first," to Tyrion. And I thought that's something a mother would do, kneeling down and say, "You want to play," or bending down. But in opposition to my theory, if that's true, if I'm right that Mance is Rhaegar, he's not shaving his head. So is he dyeing his hair? I'm not, I'm still a little confused on my theories, but we'll see.
I do want to add that, kind of off topic, but Varys, to the viewers, it appears as if, I talked to my mom about this, Varys and Littlefinger are obviously meant to be mirrored against each other. To me, I mean, I think it's apparent that Littlefinger's goal is to get as high as he can, and he thrives off of chaos. It's like you go work for a huge corporation at the bottom, and you do your damnedest, and then you do your damnedest to please the boss above your boss, and then ruin your boss. And you climb that way. Chaos is not a pit; it's a ladder. Versus Varys, who thinks you need to control every tiny little bit of everything, so that you've got the plans stacked upon plans, so that everything is taken care of. But the issue for Varys is that your linchpin, if you've got all these different things, they're generally surrounding one ideal, which is to put Aegon on the throne. And if that one thing is flawed, then your whole plan is flawed. And we already know Aegon's a little bit spoiled, so or appears to have been spoiled.
Varys didn't spoil him.
I wanted to put out there that when Varys looks at the throne, to the viewer, we know what that means. I mean, we think we do. That it's not him that wants the throne. He wants the throne for Aegon. But for the people who don't know it, that was done really well because they already think Varys only wants what's best for the kingdom. When he did that, they're all thinking, but he doesn't want that throne. But he's looking at it. I think that was done perfectly. It got them.
If I can add something to that, James, I just realized, if he is a woman, he realizes and always has he can never take the throne ever because he's a woman.
Well,
but
hold on.
Hold on. Didn't LaDonna finish? I agree with you, James. I know what you're going to say, but LaDonna, just say what you're going to say, because I
know what he's going to say too. And please, folks, if you have not read *The Princess and the Queen*, please pick it up. But still,
I haven't been able to find it.
You couldn't find it?
Do you have a Kindle?
I haven't checked since I've been here, but the last city I was living at, I couldn't find it, and I haven't looked online, so my bad that way.
Do you have a Kindle?
No. Well, actually, I do.
If you have a Kindle, it's on Amazon. You can get it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I got mine on Kindle as well.
Yeah, but anyway, back to the scene. I mean, leave the Princess and the Queen out for just a second. But Varys says, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. The women before me couldn't do it, but by God, I got a son. And James and I talked about this too. It's really interesting if you talk about gender bending. If Varys is a woman, and if she is the potential mother of Aegon, or at least it's fostered a child, she went and pursued her career away from home, thinking that she's done everything for this child. She's given him the best daycare, the best schools, the best education, and banking on Illyrio as dad to keep that up. But Illyrio spoiled the shit out of him. And now he feels entitled. And I think that's hilarious. What a bit gender-bending twist. I love it.
And to add to that a little bit more, Varys is the epitome of what Olenna is doing. Olenna's not in charge of anything, but she's playing the game through somebody else. Well, Varys is the epitome of the woman, the class in a society that does not appreciate the women, does not put them on the same pedestal as men. Then the only way for
they,
the females. Oh, hold up! I got called for interrupting you.
Keep finishing. Go on, James.
She is the epitome of a female in that kind of society. She is plucking the strings to the best of her in the most ridiculous ways. Varys obviously has a lot planned from the get-go. We get Maester Illyrio and Varys talking in the dungeons in the very beginning. She is the spider, which is Arachne, the Greek goddess. She's plucking the strings. She's the perfect female. Before, and it's the combination of her and Dany and Olenna and all the women we get, so that'll ultimately be the flowering of all the women at the end when we realize that Robert's or Ned's mama's still alive, possibly Joanna, Rhaella, and then ultimately Val, if I'm right. But yeah,
just a thought on what both you and LaDonna was saying. This partially feeds into why I think Daenerys still has a strong chance of becoming Queen of Westeros, if that makes any sense, is because, you know, the story we've been set up so, and I include the Dance with Dragons in this, the Princess and the Queen short story. We've been set up with the idea that, you know, there's been such a precedent of women trying to attain power in various forms, trying to hold power, and it's been constantly unsuccessful. And I just feel that perhaps a woman attaining queenship or rulership in this land would be more or less the catalyst of all these events from the past of Westeros kind of coming to full fruition by the end of A Song of Ice and Fire. It doesn't necessarily have to mean Daenerys, but I also think Sansa would play a big role in that. Go ahead, LaDonna.
I think we should look to Sansa.
I definitely agree with you on her.
Yeah. Which is really ironic because she starts out as a whiny little girl. But, you know, I think we need to mirror her with that. And I want to. I've got a lot of theories about Sansa. Let me just simply say this. Let me say this.
All ears.
I think the words that the Hound has said, "Fuck the king." He said it 3 times now. Fuck the king. In different scenarios. I think that Sansa is going to have to fuck the king. And I think that when he said, "You'll be glad of the hateful things I do when I stand between you and your beloved king," I think that's the Night's King. And I think she is going to have to fuck that king. And by God, I hope she's pregnant before she has to, so she doesn't get inseminated. So wrap your head around that one, folks.
That's pretty strong.
That's a very deep thought there, yeah.
Very strong. I like that.
Well, it's going to play in on the veil stuff I go into, and James is going to be quiet and let me do an hour video. I wanted to say one.
I never said an hour.
Well, it'd be 2 hours. Charlie, I want to ask this, and I'm going to address this to you, but I'm going to also address it to Tony the Don Teflon.
Check out Tony Teflon, by the way. He has a great channel. Shout out to Tony.
I love Tony. But I'm going to address this mainly to you guys. What gives Dany the right to come over and destabilize an entire continent just because 20 or 30 years ago somebody in her family was on that throne? Now hold that thought for a second. Look at it this way. Don't look at it.
My lips are sealed.
Don't look at it like it was only 20 years ago. Let's look at it in terms of the United States and Britain for just a moment. You know, about 200 and some years ago, we said to Britain, "Fuck you, fuck the king," and we're going to have our country. If Britain was a power and said, "Oh my God, you know, the United States is in a period of destabilization, let's just go over and take it back," is it right to do that because it was yours a few years ago when you know that it's going to completely uproot everything that the United States was for? And I use U.S. in a general sense. Is that right?
Yeah, but when you say you use the U.S. in a general sense, you can paint that with another nation and end up with a completely different story.
Sure, you can. I don't mean the U.S. I'm not being a nationalist right now. I'm just saying in that context, is it right? It's certainly... I think we need to think about that.
Well, I'm not saying necessarily that Daenerys is right to go over there and conquer, but I am saying that I think, given the way things will be playing out in Westeros, I do believe that she might be able to bring something a lot better to that whole continent than what's going on currently.
Yeah,
Just my 2 cents on that.
I have heard that argument, but you know what she's really bringing? Weapons of mass destruction.
That's cool.
If that's how you see dragons, I mean, what can I say? All I wanted was a dragon growing up. Just kidding. No, obviously you have some good points. I'm not going to deny that.
I don't dislike Dan. You have to think about, is it right just because you had a great-grandfather who was on that throne that you get to come over? I mean, I don't...
Well, LaDonna, do remember I am Canadian, and we do have the Queen of England as our queen as well.
Oh, my God.
Call me a covert monarchist, but if we didn't have the queen, we'd be just like you guys, right?
Not covert any longer.
Well, not anymore, I guess. I guess it's just a different way of looking at things.
Well, yeah, and I've heard that argument, and taking the opposite side of that argument, which I do every day in my life since I'm a lawyer, I have to look at it from both sides, and that's what they train us to do. But I have to say, I'm not sure that's so right. But the other side of the argument is that the people who have been running it have fucked it up completely. You know, it's just screwed up. So maybe there is a need for a complete overturn, a coup. But it's God bless Martin is brilliant. That's all I can say.
Agreed. And when I say I'm in favor of Daenerys, I am obviously speaking in the sense that this is a book, first of all, and second of all, of course, it's more the character herself and her own progression and her own growth as it takes place in the series that really, I guess, makes me a person who is, Team Dany at the end of the day.
You'd be a great SS guard.
Ouch!
What the fuck? Low blow.
My grandparents would not like that. Just put it out there.
Especially after the anti-Semitic warnings we were given earlier.
I know. LaDonna kind of pushed that one.
Was fucked up, Mama. Hey, it
was a joke.
What's the theory?
I hope it was a joke.
What's the theory where any political conversation ends up ultimately referring to Hitler?
Yeah, I know that. I know that, and I truly don't believe Dany is a Hitler figure at all. I like Dany a lot, but I do think that Martin wants us to play with those ideas, and that's what this discourse is about, right?
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. I just see it as a book. I don't know, a book series that's really, really engaging. Well, I don't know if there was a real life Daenerys and of course the way you present it, I don't know if I would be so willing to support her cause in that context. But because I know her in a very different light, because she's been presented to me in this book in a certain way, I think there's a certain appeal there, obviously.
And in Essos, we gotta support her. She freed slaves.
Exactly. Donna's point is that we're comfortable here, and if somebody came in and screwed it all up for us, we'd be pretty pissed off. So what gives them the right sort of thing?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I said in a real life situation, I wouldn't be so inclined to like that.
I'm not trying to piss anybody off. I just thought I'd throw that in to think about.
Well, too fucking late.
No, it's food for thought, though. I actually think that's pretty good. Disclaimer: I'm not a Nazi, though. I think her ideology is a little bit more like communism in a certain sense, considering she wants everyone to be free and equal. I don't know. Maybe she's more of a Stalin figure.
Yeah, well,
not that that's any better, but...
I would also like to say that my grandfather's name was Lambrecht, and he was from Germany, so I don't have any problem with Germans either, so okay, there we go. I just want to talk about it. That's all I want to do.
Well, Polish ancestors, We can all get along. All right, moving it along, any other thoughts on this specific scene with Oberyn and Varys? We kind of got sidetracked there quite a bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add one more thing. I still think that Pedro Pascal is one sexy beast.
Somebody online described him as the Mediterranean Liam Neeson. I thought that was the perfect way to describe him.
Mediterranean who? Liam Neeson?
Liam Neeson.
Ooh.
Isn't he from Latin America?
Yeah, he's from Chile, I think, or Argentina.
Right.
But he's American. I mean, I've heard him in interviews. He if he wasn't born here, he speaks like an.
You mean American as in North and South American?
No, I mean Northern American.
I don't think so. He's South American. I disagree.
I'm telling you, I've heard his interviews.
I would look it up.
He's been here a long time. Anyway, he's just really sexy. That's all I have to say.
Good thoughts. Shall we move it along? And on that note, shall we address the infamous trial, which I have a lot to say on, or at least things that I consider pretty significant. Alrighty?
He's from Chile, Mama.
Chilean.
Chile American.
Latino.
So he is indeed South American.
So he's technically American.
It says Chilean American. He was born in Chile. Soon after his birth, his family was granted political asylum in Denmark, while Chile was under the military Pinochet. Lived an interesting life.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I want to hear your thoughts on the trial, because honestly, can I just say straightforward? I thought the trial was absolutely beautiful, and besides one or two things, I really don't have much to say about it. So Charlie, knock it out.
Yeah, knock it out.
Alrighty. Here it comes then, folks. So in the dungeon, we have Jaime. He has Tyrion shackled and brought into the throne room by order of Tywin, of course, to begin his trial for regicide. King Tommen he recuses, I guess, himself from the trial and appoints his grandfather Tywin, Prince Oberyn Martell, and Lord Maesterel as the judges. Several witnesses are called for the prosecution, and this includes Meryn Trant, Grand Maester Pycelle, and the Queen Regent Cersei, and of course Varys, and they all give testimony backing the accusations against Tyrion, while conveniently omitting Joffrey's own horrendous actions, I think. At recess, then, Jaime asks Tywin to spare Tyrion, offering to leave the Kingsguard and return to Casterly Rock to be Tywin's heir. Tywin accepts right away, telling Jaime that Tyrion will be allowed to join the Night's Watch after being found guilty of Joffrey's murder, provided he pleads for mercy and, admits his guilt. Of course, this kind of shows that Tywin had this intent all along, though I don't think this was necessarily up for questioning in the first place. But returning to the trial, Tywin orders the next witness to testify, who is Shae. And I have a lot of issues with this specific moment, but I will address them when they come up. Shae falsely testifies that Tyrion and Sansa planned Joffrey's murder together. She claims that Sansa wanted vengeance for the murder of her father, mother, or brother. She tells the judges that Tyrion's, his sexual desires, basically embarrassing him in front of the court. Before she can continue, Tyrion confesses that he did not murder Joffrey, but wishes that he had. He also wishes that he had enough poison for the ungrateful people of King's Landing who stand before him, who he says he saved from Stannis' attack on the Blackwater Bay, which, of course, we know he largely did, but, of course, we had some help from the Tyrells in the end.
He thinks that to himself in the books. They made a point of making it out loud. I thought that was interesting.
Very interesting, yes. This was also, before I forget, this was an amazing speech. I think it was one of the best in the whole series for the TV show. But as the speech continues, he faces Tywin, and Tyrion accuses his father of putting him on trial because of his dwarfism. He basically finishes by saying that he refuses to be executed for a crime he did not commit, and that the gods will decide his fate, and demands a trial by combat. So, if you would allow me to just get right into my thoughts on this scene. Well, I guess I can first talk about Varys in this context, and I mentioned it again in my own video, where Varys is called to the stand. Tyrion is allowed to ask Varys one question, and it has to do as to whether or not Varys will forget him. And Varys makes some comment that, sadly, my lord, I never forget a thing, which in my mind kind of hints that even though overtly he is accusing Tyrion of all these crimes, he is in the back of his mind still holding on to Tyrion for in order to save him, or for, well, we know what's going to happen in the future, obviously, with Varys, but this kind of foreshadows that event because it's a hint that, of course, Varys will do something for Tyrion, even though maybe at this moment in time Tyrion's led to believe that perhaps Varys will do something for him in terms of his trial by combat, potentially, when he does make that demand. My biggest, I guess, issue with this scene was when Shae came to give her false testimony. Now, you guys know that I've made my claim that I think Shae will die by Tywin's hands, that he said many episodes ago that he's going to murder, that
Charlie, lost you for a second there, Charlie. Well, since he's gone, I'll start talking and I'll stop when he
Better
gets.
you than me.
Okay, so um, do you remember what point at which he stopped? It stopped him.
Shay's false
Shay.
testimony.
Shay. Okay. We'll get him back.
I think
So, go ahead.
there's been I don't know why, but watching this, I think there was even a bigger argument for Shay being working for somebody else, and I think it's probably Littlefinger. I meant to make notes on all the points, but she was never scared of going to King's Landing with them. Right before Roz gets killed by Joffrey, her and Shay have that talk, and then Littlefinger gives Roz to Joffrey. Again, there's the very first.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hey.
Go ahead.
Sorry, folks. 1 second. Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hear you.
I can hear you. 1 second.
We can hear you.
Bottom of the screen.
We can hear you, Charlie. We can hear you. We can hear you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know why he can't hear us.
I
So
got him on two.
little technical difficulties. Go ahead, Maester Payne.
A lot of static here.
Yes.
There you go. Maybe let's get him back in here. See if we can get him right.
Yeah. You guys can have one of your epic discussions too. I'm gonna run out for another cigarette.
Okay. So let me just run through some stuff I noticed in the trial since I just sent Charlie an invite. So there he is.
Hey, folks. I'm sorry.
There you go. No worries. Can you hear us?
I can hear you guys perfect this time. I tried my computer and it wouldn't work. So somebody keeps calling me all the time whenever I'm doing these chats. It's always the same person.
Oh,
so.
the call. Okay.
I apologize.
We stopped at Shay. We didn't hear
Yes.
anything you had to say on Shay.
Were you guys discussing something else? I don't want to butt in.
No, we were just filling in. Maester Payne's mentioned that he feels like the stuff in this episode about Shay implied that Shay was under somebody's thumb. He said he kind of thinks it's Littlefinger.
Okay.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah. Charlie, go for it.
Yeah, sorry. So, Shay, yes. My issue with Shay in this scene was, well, of course, I have my theory as to how, Shay is going to be killed by Tywin because you already heard my spiel on that. But the reason why this bothered me so much is that it seemed really, really strange why Shay would so easily betray Tyrion in this context. We had this huge build-up with this character, her relationship with Tyrion. It seemed really, really strong. And it seems very strange for her to just betray him at the drop of a dime after, he clearly wants to send her away to protect her. And like I mentioned in previous reviews, she's not a stupid person. She has to know that he's not doing it for any selfish reason. He's not doing it because he doesn't like her. He's clearly doing it because he wants to protect her. And I think she knows this. Having said that, this scene where she so openly betrays him doesn't quite make sense to me. Maybe this is just me still grappling with the possibility that my theory might not come to pass, but I'm still convinced that something must have happened to her. Maybe Tywin or Cersei or somebody like that told Shay or threatened Shay that if she did not and if confessed to these said crimes, that Tyrion would be guaranteed to be killed, executed, and that she herself also might pay the same price. And she might have been told that, if you confess to these crimes, then we'll let you and Tyrion go live your lives together wherever, maybe in exile, I don't know. So that would kind of fulfill her inner desire as in terms of having Tyrion alter herself. So that was my thoughts on that scene, and that's kind of why I had trouble accepting that Shay was just so easily betray Tyrion at the drop of a hat. Of course, if she was betraying him, it would make it their relationship all the more tragic, considering, after 3 seasons of them building up this relationship, she would throw it all away for something so stupid. But I don't know. That was my concern with this specific scene, and I don't know what you guys thought on that. That's all.
As far as Shay's concerned, I think we're forced to face 3 possibilities. One is that she was forced into this situation, and if that's the case, we have to wonder whether it's just now or whether she's always been forced, manipulated, or something like that. Another alternative is that she's there to get back at Tyrion, but I think that's definitely not it. She turns around to get back at Tyrion. I mean, she does have. They foreshadowed that possibility with her being pissed at Tyrion when Varys offers her the diamonds, and it appears as if it was Tyrion that told him to do that.
And
But
when she slaps Bronn. And when she slaps Bronn.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
First season, I think.
No.
We're talking about Shay here.
I'm talking about, James. You're right. In the first scene about the diamonds, and then when Tyrion says you have to go away, you're a whore, and instead of taking it out on Tyrion, she turns around and slaps Bronn as he tries.
Oh, right.
Yeah, okay, I remember that. So the either she's trying to get back at him, which I don't think is possible. It's possible she's forced into the situation. She has been for a long time, but I think either way it's apparent from this situation that she did care for him, because she almost breaks down when he says, "Please don't." And she says, "I'm a whore." Remember? But I think the third possibility is to help. I sincerely think that she is arguably being manipulated, but she thinks that what she's doing is to help. And that's why it's Tywin's bed she ends up in. And we get a huge reveal in this episode that's not in the books, which is that Tywin didn't do this to hurt Tyrion. Well, he's going to send him to the wall. But he did this to manipulate Jaime, to get Cersei what she wanted, which was punishment to Tyrion, and to trick Jaime into giving him what he wanted, which is Jaime's reaction. I'll do whatever, blah, 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 if you just let Tyrion live. Done. And we watch Jaime go, that was easy.
Because
I was manipulated the whole time. And I think that goes to show us that Shay was told, either you come and testify or something bad's going to happen to Tyrion. She does that, and then Tywin says, and the other thing you owe me is to bone me, and which I think is meant to be some kind of weird sexual thing, which we may get exposed in the TV show, unlike it. That hasn't been talked about in the books. But it needs to be a reveal later, in my opinion, so we might not get that. That's my response to the Shay thing. And as far as her being manipulated, I think it's been more planted that it would be Varys than Littlefinger, but if she is being manipulated by someone other than Tywin, I have no idea who it is. I would think Varys.
If I can say this, I think that this was not a well played character by the writers. I'm going to say that. I don't
disagree entirely.
Well, you can think whatever you want, but
how can you pick a character you don't even understand?
Well, hold on, LaDonna, finish your thoughts. I want to hear why you think this.
I don't think they wrote her very well from the beginning, but who am I to cast aspersions on D.B. Weiss? And I mean, come on, the guys are great. I guess I have to say that she was an ambiguous figure throughout the books, and they had to pick one way or the other. So my feeling, if I just plain look at the scene, I think she was getting back at Tyrion in a certain way, and I think that she also has been, obviously, Cersei's spy. Either Cersei or Tywin's spy is the one that caught her screaming at Tyrion in that bedroom. And so I think she's been threatened, and I think that she tried to play it tough, but when push comes to shove, when you are maybe either subjected to torture, which she did not look like she was at the trial, or threatened with it, it's pretty easy to turn coat.
I don't know.
What?
I don't know. I agree with you that her character is very different from the books. She does come across a lot more two-dimensional in the book series, whereas here we have a character who has actual feelings, emotions, and seems to be able to not compensate, commiserate, I guess, with other characters, and we're able to, at least to some degree, relate with her or have sympathy for her. And that's why I still have so much trouble grappling with the idea that, she would turn coat, just as you say, against Tyrion. And I know maybe I'm holding on to the hope of a hope, but I still think that the best way for her to go out would be if Tywin, maybe he forces her to have sex with him and then he kills her, and then discovering this, Tyrion is the one to off his father. I still think that's the best alternative. I know you disagree, but
it's going to go down just like the book.
I gotta interrupt you guys for a split second.
Maester, go for it.
Sorry. No, Charlie, it's just a question for you. Did Montreal win?
I haven't been watching hockey lately, but they've been doing well against the Bruins. I haven't seen their game today.
Yeah, the game's on tonight, I think, and somebody just
tonight.
said that they moved on, which sucks. But sorry, I apologize. Canadian thing.
Good thought. I'd have to ask my sister. She's actually the bigger fan, ironically.
Gotcha.
I stick to Game of Thrones.
I saw your Habs jersey last review, so.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Christmas gift. Go Habs. Anyway.
I apologize. Go on.
Sorry. Yeah. Any thoughts, James?
I got two things I'd like to add and then a question. One thing I'd like to add is that Tyrion in public refers to Joffrey as a bastard.
Yeah.
It obviously implies that Tommen is and Marcella. So that was a huge thing for him to do. And it really, I bet a lot of people didn't notice it because we picture Joffrey as a bastard, but that was in public. And that's the first time Tyrion's ever acknowledged it in public. Anyone besides Tywin and Varys and his family, basically.
James, that was a great point, and I give you all the kudos because I missed that. But not only was it in public, but it kind of was a fuck you to Jaime.
It was especially a fuck you to his dad, I think. It was a way to tell his father, to destroy his father's legacy in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah, but it also puts him theoretically at odds with Jaime, and we know what happens with Jaime. But it was like, screw you! I'm even going to tell everybody my brother fucked my sister, and Jaime's his Deus Ex Machina in this. So,
I guess in a roundabout way, he was throwing his brother under the bus. I just think all of his anger was clearly intended for Tywin because Tywin kept going on about this whole notion of family unity and family strength together. And this is, I guess, Tyrion's own personal way, at least in some small degree, to try and destroy that.
I can't disagree with you. And also, if I could say this, first of all, I think that Dinklage just nailed it. I have a friend who is a book reader but hadn't gotten to this point, and he was disappointed because it went so fast. And I had to tell him, the trial happened actually over a few days in the books, but they got to move through it. Because if they don't move through it quickly, you lose the tension of the importance of his speech at the end. But I just think that Dinklage just nailed the shit out of that scene.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was awesome.
Agreed. Oh, Payne, Montreal won, by the way.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, sorry.
I'm
trying to forget now. Did you guys? I'm not exactly sure where you guys were because I stepped out, but right before the intermission, when you see the crowd leaving and Tyrion's facing us, it's like they've turned their back on him, he's turned their back on them. I thought that was the takeaway from that shot. It was everybody's leaving, all their backs are to him, and he's facing away from them, which I thought was pretty cool.
I did not even notice that the crowd was leaving.
Me neither.
No, did I?
But good job, good job, Maester, and good job, Peter Dinklage, apparently, for getting us to not notice it.
I love that subtle smile that Tyrion gave Tywin, really subtle, when they finally did the great stare down at the end, and Tyrion starts it out with a fuck you smile, and then they gradually just go into this staring off contest.
Oh,
what were we saying, Maester?
Oh, and you guys may have touched on it already, but when he turns to give his angry statement, he's dark. Like everything about him is dark. But then he turns back again to look at the audience, and we get the Tyrion that we've been watching all these seasons. There's two different shades to his face, and you see it also when he's talking to Jaime in the cell. His one half is pitch black, the other half's light. It's just that scene was just perfect. I loved it.
Fascinating. I love that, Maester Payne. I'm going to have to go rewatch it again. Not like I wasn't going to go rewatch it anyway, but that's awesome. I didn't even notice it, and I'm sure my mom loved it because she's of the opinion that Tyrion really has a two-faced sort of perspective. I'm getting too complicated, but that's brilliant, Maester Payne. I didn't even notice it. I'm going to rewatch it.
It was beautiful.
If I can, I'm going to... I mentioned that it's a big reveal that Tywin wouldn't kill Tyrion, and that it's all a game to him, that he's playing the world, including his own children. He gets Jaime to do what he wants, and he appeases Cersei by putting Tyrion on the wall, and he gets rid of the issue of Tyrion by putting him on the wall. And Jaime can't tell Tyrion what his deal is, because Tyrion won't accept it, because he knows what Jaime's given up, what it means to Jaime. We don't know that, but it's just generally implied that Jaime cannot tell Tyrion what the deal is. And Tyrion doesn't have to know, because Tyrion just knows that this is all fucking bullshit, and that it's Tywin behind the whole thing. So this was Tyrion's final gasp, saying, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not playing this game anymore. Either shoot me or let me go, is basically what he said. I loved it. But I wanted to point out the role of trials in these series. We got the trial... Ned Stark's was not a trial. It was a you're guilty, get in the dungeon. Then we got...
Lysa and Tyrion.
We got Lysa and Tyrion, which we knew wouldn't be fair, so it became solely a
trial by combat.
Trial by combat, and now we get a situation where we see a real trial happen, but it's not fair. There was no crossing the witness, meaning the other side calls them, and once they've asked their questions, you ask your own questions. There was no cross. Tyrion had to ask his father for permission to ask one question, and even then it didn't benefit him. He didn't even care. There was no crossing, and then there were no witnesses. Tyrion couldn't call any witnesses because they'd all been scared or manipulated or killed or held captive, and there's no rights there either. Tyrion was basically told, keep your mouth shut. Everybody else is going to tell why you're guilty. And that is how a trial used to be run, at least as far as your witnesses spoke for you, and that was it. And we're watching the evolution of trials happen. And Tyrion has been Master of Coin. He was Hand of the King for a while. He's seen the detriments of trial happen. Tyrion is built to be the Hand of the King at the end of this. That is why his two-faced aspect, to me, has to be... we have to see some sort of resolution with that. He is built to be a Hand of the King because he knows what an unfair trial is, and he knows what it is to manage a kingdom. Now, if I could finish up all the things I have written down by asking y'all, do you think that the next episode starts immediately after Tyrion says, I demand a trial by combat, like the murder of Joffrey began with... the next episode began with Cersei screaming? Do y'all think that's going to happen, or are we done with that trial?
Well, the next episode is Mockingbird, so it's going to primarily concentrate at the Vale.
Agreed with LaDonna. I think we're not going to get the official trial until episode 8, I think it is. I think there's even the title of the episode.
Combat's the next one. I guess what I mean to say, are we done in the trial room? Because it seemed to me as if we still needed some people to say some stuff in that trial room.
We're finished.
Okay.
Well, what about... No, wait. There's one thing we have to find out, that Oberyn's going to declare to fight for Tyrion, no? Or could that happen outside of the trial room?
We need to have a conversation between Oberyn and Tyrion before that happens.
That'll be in the dungeon, though, right?
That's right. That would be in the judgment, like when he actually has to do the trial by combat. Somebody.
He's
the dungeon.
In the dungeon.
I'm not sure. I think they may have a small council meeting before then, where says "fuck you." And by the way, I loved Oberyn at the end of this when he kind of.
We're on the same topic.
I'm sorry. I loved it. Oberyn leaned forward in his chair when Tyrion started doing his rant, and he kind of went, "I like this guy."
Yeah. I agree.
We do get an image in the next episode for the clip anyway, for episode 7, where Tyrion is in the dungeon. And we also have a clip of the mountain finally. And it was a bit of a weird scene because I don't think this happens in the book, where the mountain looks like he's striking down a bunch of peasants, I think, with his sword. For a bastard sword, it was really strange. I wonder
Well,
what he's doing in that scene.
They took the story, we know the Mountain's a bad guy, and we get story after story of the bad things he does. We even get him referenced to torture with Harrenhal. But the story we get of him that makes him the evil person he is the rape of the tavern girl, where everybody, they're all, the tavern girl and the innkeeper are taking care of all of the Mountain's men, and the Mountain's men start to molest her basically bit by bit, and the tavern guy comes to the Mountain and begs him to get them to stop them to some extent, and he ultimately rapes her and then gives the innkeeper a coin and then allows everybody to rape her. Well, that was switched and kind of became the scene with Arya and the Hound.
Yeah.
So to me, this scene is meant to place all of the moral being devoid of morality, describing the Mountain as being devoid of morality. It's obvious in that little clip that he's going to fuck that guy.
Let me ask a question, folks, and remind me, because I can't remember in the books. Does Oberyn go and talk to Tyrion privately in the dungeon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And ask him, I believe, to basically tell him that Tywin's guilty.
What? I'm talking about... No. Does Oberyn go and talk to Tyrion in the dungeon?
It's not... Does he?
I'm pretty sure he does. That's what I thought. That's what I was saying.
We're talking in the books or in the TV show?
The books.
The books... For some reason, I guess you must be right. For some reason, I seem to remember him just stepping forward during the actual trial, but maybe I'm confusing it with Bronn, obviously, during the Eyrie, so I think you might be right.
I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying I don't think so. I know he goes and talks to Tywin privately because that's where we think that he gave him some poison in his wine. But I can't remember how he declares for Tyrion in the books. Do you all remember it, or don't?
I just read it. I just read it, and I can't remember it.
There's also a scene with Oberyn talking to Tyrion where he tells Tyrion that he's the true heir to Casterly Rock. He omits Jaime and calls Tyrion the true heir. And I think that's in the dungeon.
Okay.
Oberyn, I'm looking it up right now. Oberyn offers to be...
I've got it right here. After the first day, the situation seems hopeless, but Tyrion again seeks trial by combat after Prince Oberyn Martell visits his cell and offers to serve as his champion in the trial. So Oberyn visits Tyrion's cell and offers to be his champion. Mm-hmm. So we may just get it out in the open. But I bet it, which is what I pictured happening is us cutting back to the scene with them in the trial room, and Cersei standing up and saying, "I claim the Mountain," and Oberyn hearing that and standing up and saying, "And I volunteer to do it on the side," because we've set it up.
We should see that.
It would make sense too for the viewers because they would see this occur and then they'd think, "Oh, well, Oberyn's going to kill the Mountain, and justice is going to be served." But little they know, of course, in the actual trial by combat, that Oberyn doesn't end up too well either.
I agree with everything you've said. I can see it going down either Cersei or Tywin. But if I can say this,
Cersei has the right to.
Sorry, LaDonna?
What I particularly liked about this scene overarching with Tywin is a perfectionist. And this is a reason that he does not like Tyrion. That's one reason. I think he also thinks he's Aerys's kid. But one reason is Tyrion does not meet up with his expectations of a beautiful Lannister child. Tywin expects every plan he puts in motion to go exactly the way he expects it to go. He's such a perfectionist. And then when Tyrion turns around and says to him, "Fuck you, I'm not playing into this. If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna go out the way I decide I'm gonna go out. I'll leave it up to gods, but I'm not leaving it up to you." And I just thought that was a perfect... Chaos is a ladder. In other words, if you put something in a perfect plan like life does to all of us, it's going to screw up. It's never the way you expect it to be. It's a journey. You can plan it out any way you want to, but it's going to take you on a ride no matter what.
Well
Agreed.
said.
Agreed. Should we talk a little bit more about things to come in the next episode? I think we pretty much covered everything we had to say about the episode itself.
I'm so excited about the next episode.
I have a couple more things about the
Go ahead,
trial.
Maester. Yeah, go for it.
We get the mention of the Strangler. I think that's sort of, well, I mean, I'm sure we probably get it in the books too, but a nudge towards Tyrion as Valonqar. Just the naming, just that. I mean, I don't even think that he's.
Neither do I, but that's a good point because it also brings up the speech that he said to Cersei.
Viewers might go back there and then rewatching episodes, the Strangler's there. Again, with my overall theme, everybody that's called up to testify against Tyrion's basically somebody they're not. Pycelle, we know Pycelle's playing old when he's actually a lot more fit than he is. Shay herself saying that she's his whore when actually I don't think Tyrion was looking at her at all as his whore. You guys might have touched on that. There's other things I could get into, but even when we end the episode, we hear the Rains of Castamere again. Even in that song, it's the same thing that's throughout this whole thing. And who are you? The Proud Lord said, da-da-da-da. It's the question of who we are. And I thought it was cool for the episode, but then you start thinking about the books and how many of these same things that we have. We have like the Mystery Knight, somebody pretending to be somebody they're not, the Mountain, Robert Strong. Like, you go down the list. So I think this was a really key episode for us. I'm not exactly sure why, but the same stuff's in the books, just in different contexts, and this has got to at least be top 3 episode in my opinion.
No, God, no question. And I think the question of identity, who are you? I mean, who are you? And remember Jaime's, and when I say who are you, I mean that we kind of evolve through our lives and we have to work out issues. And that goes to Jaime's dream where his mother comes in and he says, who are you? And she goes, the question is, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to figure out who you are, what you stand for, where you came from. You've got to think. And that's the way that human beings evolve and become real and genuine before they die. And I think that's a definite thing for everybody in this series.
I think there's...
Except for Janos Lynn, who dies an idiot.
There's a few people who die an idiot.
Any more thoughts on this last scene?
I think I just want to say, Maester Payne, you nailed that with the idea of identity.
Agreed.
It's great.
Really, that's awesome.
Great. I want to say, as far as the previews for next week, when I saw Sansa building that snow castle, I went, oh my God, yes, yes, yes.
And how about when her dear Aunt Lysa was holding her over the moon gate, or the moon door, or whatever, the trap door?
It's going down the way the books say.
And so soon, too. It's shocking to me. I can't get over that. I thought for sure they're going to draw it out, but...
How about the fact that they showed the Hound without his armor on it? Oh, baby, I love the Hound.
I wonder if this is the moment when Arya and him are finally going to get split up. I wonder.
I do too, but that's a lot to deal with. That's a lot to put in a scene, but I have to say, if we mirror it with Sansa becoming stronger and Arya pulling away from them, it kind of works.
Agreed. I think these last 4 episodes, we're definitely going to get a lot of, not only deaths of significant characters, but a lot of really crazy information going to be revealed. I mean, I think next episode, I think it's pretty obvious we're going to see the death of dear Lysa Tully, finally.
Yeah.
And then the episode after, Oberyn Martell, assumedly. And then episode 9 and 10, I mean, we're going to finally meet the Children of the Forest, among other people, in the great battle for the Wall. I'm hoping, anyway.
All right, well, yeah, but let's go back to, that's great, but let's...
I know, I'm talking...
Go back to the Moon Door for just a moment.
Okay.
Varillion had his tongue cut out in the 2nd season, and he is the singer. So who is it that Littlefinger is going to have in the room to pin that murder of Liza on?
Ooh, good question.
Very good.
That's something I didn't think about before. Do you think they're going to have a different character? But how would they introduce a character so fast who's hitting on Sansa? They have to make it some random person.
They've already introduced.
The
And
Maester?
they may have taken it out, but they already had that singer that got his tongue cut out. To me, they could just put him in the scene as playing to them.
He can't talk. He can't speak for himself. That may work really, really well.
But how did he get there in the first place? Isn't he at King's Landing? Last we saw him.
Yeah, but that's been a year.
It's been a while. I know, but it just seems like surprise. I'm back here. I don't know. It seems like a strange place to return to.
The fact that I'm just making this up as I'm going, but the fact that Liza had lemon cakes for Sansa. In the next episode, it could be like, here's another gift, and I've got a singer to sing for you or to play for you, and no, he doesn't talk. And then have the realize it's the same actor, but they played up the fact that Dantos was brought back. They haven't, like in interviews with the actor, the guy who played Dantos is coming back, but they didn't do that with the actor who played Marillion.
Unless they change the character, of course, or the actor.
True.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, folks, I recently read that Eli Payne, who has been taken out of the show, of course, Bronn does that the training with Jaime. Because this actor's been ill, his cancer's in remission. So I think they're going to.
Awesome.
That's good news.
How's Payne?
Maester must be really happy. Any predictions for next episode, minus the obvious?
Peter Baelish is going to kiss Sansa.
Like I said, LaDonna, minus the obvious.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
That's for y'all.
We love you, man. We love you.
I'm kidding. No, but I agree. I think that's going to happen.
Again, I haven't even seen the preview yet, so you guys are all talking about stuff I don't know.
They don't really show them together, but I'm inclined to believe LaDonna on this one.
Yes.
Hey, how about the fact that when you look at the snow castle, in the books, she's trying to build those twigs over so it can be the dome over where their greenhouse is. But instead of doing that, they've put one little branch kind of in the middle of the courtyard, which I think is a reference to the weirwood tree, which I loved. It's really outside the castle, but I love that little branch there.
Weirwood tree's not outside the castle.
Isn't it its own little enclosure near the castle or near the...
It's inside the outer gate.
Okay.
I believe that's correct. It's certainly inside the outer gate in the CGI one they do at the beginning of the episode.
At any rate, there's only one little branch tree there, and it's almost like it's been burned. There are no leaves, but it's still there, and it's still hanging on. I loved it.
Any other thoughts for the preview, James? I know Maester hasn't seen it, so.
It is definitely centralized on the Vale.
Amen.
Agreed. How about some...
It's called Mockingbird?
Mockingbird, that's right.
Oh, and by the way, folks,
what does a mockingbird do?
Hold on.
Mockingbird hears one thing's song and redoes it. Really what a mockingbird does is it learns local birds' songs in order to get them to piss off, to claim its own territory, and then if they come by, it scares it off to teach it not to come around here. Well, Sansa is learning from a master how to manipulate and lie. And he even changed his sigil to a mockingbird. That was not his family sigil.
Well, not only that, but Sansa's sigil is a direwolf, and she's constantly referred to by the Hound as Little Bird, and she is by Cersei as Little Dove. So we've got the mockingbird and two birds on her side, maybe peace and also singing, which is diplomacy. I mean, they use the word singing as being a diplomat in this book many, many times.
You know what?
Go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick thought that popped in my head. You know how we see I think it was last episode, we see little Robin throwing out the glass dove, I think, or glass bird out of the window. I just thought about that, but I think it is I mean, it's pretty obvious, I guess, but it is a bit of a foreshadowing of things to happen with Liza. I mean, she is, you know, she's the mother of little Aaron, or little Robin Aaron. She is, you know, still representing the great house of Aaron, which the sigil is, you know, the rise. I think it's a rising bird, right? If I recall.
And a crescent.
It's the falcon.
The falcon. Okay. Well, I mean, in a sense, you know, the mother falcon is going to be flying too out of that window just as her son threw.
Yeah, and if I can also say, if the folks who are watching it, you know, the mythology of the Griffin King, which was the original House Aaron before it was House Aaron, is really, really important, because if you look up the Griffin King, it is kind of dragon-like.
One last thought, actually, that reminded me of something you said, LaDonna. In the Princess and the Queen, it's interesting how they brought in some characters to represent certain regions, but really contrast with their current characters or their current representatives in Song of Ice and Fire. And I'm thinking especially of the Vale of Aaron here. We have Lysa, who's completely mad, out of her mind, manipulated. And in the Princess and the Queen, we have a very strong female character who is in charge of the Vale. I forget her name, but I remember she had a very significant title, and she seemed to be someone to be feared, at least in that story. So it's an interesting point of contrast there.
Wasn't she the one that the Alyssa's tears came from? Was that during the Age of Heroes with the Griffins?
That's the Age of Heroes. We don't really know the truth.
I don't really.
I do want people to look up what Griffin is. Of course, in the books, it's Griffin, but in mythology, it's Gryphon, and that thing is so dragon-like. And if I can also say, when you start surfing those threads, the Griffin becomes an angelic figure, and really, in Jewish antiquity and the Bible, the Griffin is unbelievably connected with angels. And so I'll leave y'all with that thought. But, yeah, the Stark women are going to be central in the next one. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say, folks, is there's going to be a skip of a week. We're going to have to wait 2 weeks for an episode after Mothman.
That's right. That's right. I just realized that.
We don't get an episode next week?
The week after.
Next week. We don't get an episode the week after that.
Right.
After Lady Lysa dies, there's a
I
break.
was going to cry.
I know. How will I survive? Well, I have a wedding to go to, so I wouldn't be able to watch it anyway. So
I'm going to the beach with my friends, so there you go.
There we go. We're filling our time when Game of Thrones is not on. We're coping. Okay. Should we read the questions from the...
I got a couple.
Thoughts? Okay. Let's hear them.
Taryn Andrews noted that, talking about Tyrion's two-facedness, that Tywin and Tyrion's stare down was awesome. They mirrored each other perfectly. Tyrion is Tywin Jr., she says.
Agreed.
I have said before, I'm worried that he's going to become Tywin-esque.
Definitely a possibility. I think Tyrion ends up the hand of the king at the end, but I think he's got some issues. Despite having killed his father and Shay, he is going to have some major issues later. I think Varys is his arch nemesis. I don't think the story of Tysha is true. I think that there's something else going on.
We'll see.
Shay, he's certainly got the Shay issue. Whatever reason Shay was in Tywin's room and testified at the trial, he's not going to find out until near the end of these books.
Well,
What do you mean?
I still.
Did you say Maester Payne?
You can... Sorry, LaDonna. What did you mean you don't think the story of Tish is true? What story?
I didn't.
I believe that Jaime, basically everything we know is true, except that I think that before Tysha was saved by Tyrion, I think it was somebody else's plan to plant her there.
No.
Maybe.
Well, I respect your. I think you're going way too deep in the rabbit hole, James, on this one. I think Shay was. I don't think Tysha was.
I think that's the ultimate nail in the coffin for him to realize. Because at the current stage, Tyrion thinks that Tysha was in love with him. At the current stage in the novels, Tysha was in love with him and that he threw it all away. I think it's possible that we'll find out later that that was a farce.
I think you're. With all due
Which allows
respect,
him to forgive Jaime.
I think in a narrative device, it works better for Tysha to be the real love of his life and Shay to have twisted and been tortured against him. That's my
But that's the role he's already in. There's no revelation there.
LaDonna, do you think that if Tyrion comes across Tysha, would she actually ever take him back?
Well, here's the question. Do you think that she is the woman that's in Essos who marries everybody before she has sex?
The sailor's wife.
Yeah.
I think it was you that probably pointed that out to me. I'm not sure. It's definitely a very, very strong theory.
Well, it's so obvious that I don't know if it's true. And of course, her daughter's name is Lana, which is a Tyrion name. It's so obvious that I think it might not be true, but I like the idea of playing with it.
I've heard someone else mention that she might be Garen's wife, too. Or is Garen the one that went off on the ship to look for the sword?
Yeah, the Lannister who lost Lannister's sword, Great Flame or Bright Roar? Bright Roar, I think that's what it was. I forget.
That's a point, MP, and I didn't think about that. Yeah.
It's not mine. It's just something I've heard along the way.
I suspect that LaDonna is right in this case. I think that Tisha's going to be that character that Tyrion constantly searches for, but he's never going to find. I feel like this individual, this prostitute who always has to marry the person she sleeps with the night before, is a bit of a red herring in this case, because again, it's so obvious that it seems too good to be true.
Yeah, and there has to be a lot of red herrings. Not everything can get tied up.
Exactly.
Much to Tywin's dismay.
Dre Kizzy noted that he says, I still contend that Pentos will be forced into war with Braavos, since the Iron Bank is backing Stannis, and Illyrio Mopatis is a Blackfire Phagon supporter.
I like that.
Interesting. Maybe it could be like a Cold War scenario, though, in which each faction supports a different lord, and they kind of let them battle it out, rather than themselves getting involved directly.
Going to IC Spot's message, would they then back Dany, and Dany would attack Braavos?
I think they're more scared of the dragons than anything, honestly. Because you cannot buy the dragons. Does that make sense?
Agreed. No, it makes sense.
And honestly, the dragons would be probably the only way to kill Braavos, because.
Well, I have to say this. I do think that Euron is going to get control of those two dragons for a little while, and they are seafarers, so they may go into Braavos, which we have always thought was kind of indestructible. I mean, I think all of us think Braavos is safe. It'd be pretty interesting if it wasn't as safe as they thought it was, because their little harbor can still be invaded by aerial attacks. So
Agreed.
We'll see.
Agreed, LaDonna. I think it was even stated that Bravo stayed hidden until Valyria actually collapsed. So.
Somebody pointed out Sammy Jinkus, and it seems like a lot of people are talking about it. Sammy Jinkus pointed out the possibility that if Tywin concluded his children would not be fit to further the family line, would he consider having another son?
No.
Placed into Shay.
No.
I don't know why you think that's funny. Why is that not possible?
Because, number one, Tywin is never going to marry again. He's one of those people who put all of his eggs in one basket. And I truly believe I was not laughing at that comment. I was laughing at Tywin. And he really prefers whores. I really think he prefers whores, and he's not going to have a legacy with a whore.
And I think that he's sterile.
Well, now that goes into the theory that they're all Aerys' children.
Exactly, and I don't know about that theory.
Tyrion's Tywin's. That's just it's the one bad swimmer that made his way through.
I agree with you, MP. Absolutely.
I don't know. I think they're all Lannisters through and through, but the day will come when we will find out, right?
I don't know if we'll ever find out. I don't know. And I still have an idea that even though I think Tyrion's going to go a little bit Tywin-esque, I'm still not sure he's not going to come back around again. Let's face it, folks. He's a genuine human being. He does have a soul. We'll see.
I think Cousin Ilan might have some answers into children.
I'm sorry, sir. I didn't catch that.
Ilan Payne, I think he might have some answers into Tywin's lineage.
Somebody's got to teach him to write.
Yes, absolutely. Somebody has to teach them to write.
That's really cool. Let me tell you why that's cool, MP. We've seen somebody teach Davos to read.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have somebody teach Ellen to write. Yeah.
Somebody,
comment.
Lewis Brinson pointed out the. First of all, we forgot to mention Stockholm syndrome, which is obviously what Theon has. Lewis Brinson noted the possibility that Miranda has Stockholm syndrome, but he also pointed out that Ramsay is similar to Varys in that they don't like boys or girls. They're just kind of neutral on the matter.
Well, and I don't think Varys enjoys torturing people, as far as I'm aware. I also think Miranda, maybe she's blind by love. You know, love makes us do crazy things, right?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, like your love for Danny.
Touche, touche.
I don't know. I think they introduced Miranda as being somebody who was warped before. I mean, they tried to put her into a cloister with the nuns, the septas, and she was already screwed up. Man, she just has a penchant for sadomasochism and bondage, and I just think she's just one of those folks.
Agreed.
Yep.
Any other questions?
There are a boatload. I'm trying to weed.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Forget I asked.
Jesse said we got to get LaDonna a better webcam. Lawyers can afford that shit. No, they can't. No, they cannot. At least
they can't.
At least here in South Carolina.
Also, it's my internet connection. I've got to take this thing where it works, and it's just strange.
And also, she said there's lighting issues. But yeah, that's because of the bad camera and the angle it's forcing you to do it at.
We're not here to be Hollywood stars. We're here to talk. So just turn around, don't look at us.
Amen.
Here.
How you may know where this quote is from, but Halicon, Daenerys telling them to be quiet is taken from The Godfather. She also says Daenerys' arc is a learning curve, which is best described by a quote from Joseph Campbell. Men should not be in the service of society. Society should be in the service of man. When man is in the service of society, you have a monster state.
I'm going to have to think about that, but I love Joseph Campbell.
Interesting quote. Yeah, I think about that one a little bit.
Yeah, and I have said this about Joseph Campbell. James and I have talked about it. I've not read a lot of things, but I've read some things by him. And by the way, Women Who Run with the Wolves is one of my favorite books by Clarissa Estes Pinkola or something like that. One of my favorite books. But, you know, Joseph Campbell's book, The Hero of a Thousand Faces, is a fantastic, fantastic book. And I think we're going to have heroes with lots of faces in this. There's not going to be one person. I think it is John, but there's not going to be one person. It's going to take a whole village of folks to get us where we are. Some will be silent heroes like Jojen, and some will go down in the history books.
Agreed.
A lot of people are talking about Varys being a Buddha archetype, which you and I, Mom, have talked about that being one of the archetypes that Bran is based on. But Varys being the Buddha archetype meant to be contrasted with Oberyn as sort of a Christ figure. Pretty sure it was
Oberyn is a Christ figure?
I saw some.
Sorry, Theon Greyjoy. I knew that was wrong. Theon Greyjoy is the Christ entity.
Well, you know what? We've said this before in one of our private videos, James, because I had researched some Irish mythology in the past, and not Irish mythology, history. And Reek, if you look it up on Wikipedia, the regular Wikipedia, Reek has a huge history. And didn't it end up with Reek being kind of a monastery thing, which is where we think Theon's going with Jane Poole later on?
Okay.
Explain that in more detail.
I can't. forgotten it, but I think there's a holiday associated with Rican. It's a religious holiday, and we ended up tying threads together, James, that ended up with us thinking that ultimately Theon is going to be a religious figure and will be at a monastery.
I think you had posted that in a comment somewhere. I think I've read that from you.
Mm-hmm.
And Mom, okay, disable automatic updates. A lot of people are telling Maester that the Habs won.
Yes.
There you go. Go Habs, go.
Yeah.
Are you a Habs fan, Maester?
No, not particularly. I'm an Ginla fan. I'm from Calgary originally, so I wanted Iggy to get his cup. But
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So you
All right.
hopped on the bandwagon.
The Habs now, just to bring the cup across the border.
Agreed. I think we're speaking gibberish to our two friends here, though.
Yeah.
I'm with you, though.
Well, actually, I'm starting to think about the 1-1 introduction, the character, which is the Dallas Cowboys and the Broncos, or Giants, I think it was. That's why Martin threw that in with the 1-1.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Oh, okay.
I like that when you guys talked about that. That was good.
I'm trying to load comments. There's so many. It's having.
A lot of them seem to be comment-like statements as opposed to questions, it looks like.
I got a question for you.
Go for it.
Sansa's gonna. You got another question, James?
It looks like to be the majority of them. It's hard to read them. There's 170 of them.
Oh.
Sansa is going to leave the Vale. I mean, we know she's coming down. Where's she going?
She's going to end up in some form or other as Queen of the North. Either she will be in the North, or I think she will be at. Personally, I think she will. She'll either be in the North, or she will. Sorry, what's that?
Don't go that far. Just tell me.
Oh.
When she leaves the Vale, don't go way in the future. Where is she going to go?
On her own, or with Littlefinger?
Where is the town she's going to end up in, regardless of who she's with?
Oh my God, Mom! Just tell us what you're thinking. You're thinking.
Yeah, I think of something here.
No,
I'm thinking of the. Yes, you were thinking Maidenpool.
Yeah.
I'm going to agree.
Is it because she's a maiden?
Because it has something to do with Florian and Jonquil, and there's the story of Florian and Jonquil with Maiden coming out of a pool and vowing vengeance for. That's not the story of Florian and Jonquil. We don't know what the story of Florian and Jonquil is, except for it being a fool becoming a knight. Basically, the only reference we get.
Any other questions?
No. There are a lot, but we'll get to them with we'll type them. Thank y'all so much for joining us again. Eli couldn't join us, but Maester Payne, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said last time, you keep to yourself, and sometimes I feel bad because I'm like, these are 2.5 hours, and but when you say something, you've been waiting for it. And you make it.
Let's clarify. You originally used to start this with, okay, we're going to do it. One person talks, one person talks, one person talks. I just wait to talk. But no, you're right. I have nothing near the amount of things to say as you guys do. I just have certain things that I pick up on it. I leave the big words to you guys.
But that's the thing, though. When you do say something, it's like huge. The idea that they're not being who they are. They're playing identities, and finally we get Tyrion being himself, when arguably it's one
rewatch the episode, just go down. Every main character you look at is referred to, or you can see in this episode is absolutely being somebody else or something else. It's all down the board except for Tyrion and Drogon. Arguably.
And Davos. I don't think Davos. I think Davos.
Yeah, well, Davos is referenced only in he's a smuggler, now he's a knight. He was a smuggler, that's the only tie in there, but you're right, he's...
Well, Lord Davos, I mean, is he truly Lord? I mean, he is knighted, but not in origin anyway. I don't know.
If Stannis doesn't win.
That too.
And Charlie, God, I don't know what we'd do without you on this one, especially hosting my mom, and it would just be me and my mom arguing.
Oh, We all love that anyways. We watch your videos when it's the two of you.
You
Those
guys
are
have
out well in advance. We, for the most part, at least discussing it. This is on the whim. That's why we argue on the porch before those videos.
Well, thank you guys, obviously, for the crazy amount of theories you guys present. You guys always have the best insight, like I always say, and of course for hosting this. You know, without you guys, this would not be possible at all. So naturally, me and Maester Payne, I think
Very
we
much.
both.
Thanks for inviting me to do this. It's been just had so much fun doing it. So thank you.
Likewise. This makes my Wednesdays.
Me too. Me too.
Me?
Oddly enough, we thought this wasn't going to be a long episode.
Oddly enough, that's what I thought. It was shorter than last week, wasn't it? Last week was like 3+ hours.
2.5, I think.
Last
Oh,
week
was it?
quite long.
There was one that was like 3+ hours.
Yeah.
I forget which. But...
And
We're-
to all the viewers, thank y'all so much. Maester Payne's apparently going to be making new videos. You can check his out below.
Check him out. He has good stuff.
Makes videos on the regular, and his are fantastic. And you can see that link in below as well. And my mom will have a video out soon. I will be in it, but it'll be her theories on the Erie, and I'll be making a video soon, which I mentioned earlier.
And just one quick thing, I will be, like I mentioned, going to the Game of Thrones exhibit, and assuming I'm allowed to film, I will be filming it and ideally posting it on my YouTube channel, so by all means check it out. I try to make more fluffy Game of Thrones related videos, and I have a few that I have to upload still, so they'll be coming soon.
Are we going to see you in the Iron Chair, Charlie?
You betcha, you sure will. I actually have a picture of myself on the Iron Throne from 2 years ago when I first went, but I'll be sure to sit in it again.
That's awesome.
Anyway, thanks, folks. Again, James.
Thanks for having me. Had a great time. Thank you.
Great stuff.
Good night.
Take care. Good night, and see y'all next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And Mom and I would like to thank all y'all viewers sincerely. Y'all are wonderful. We did not get our theories from y'all, but y'all are what keep us interested. Sincerely, if we didn't have these viewers, we probably would have. We would have just done these once, rarely. But thank y'all so much for watching and commenting, because that's really what keeps us going. And as always, I love you, Mama.
I love you, darling. Your mother, baby. Good night, folks. Thank you. And Claire Gray, you're brilliant. Thank you. Night.